Rawson Twitchell runs inside. Rawson Twitchell into the second level, the 10, the 5, touchdown Butte County.
It's Friday in Idaho, and it's time for another edition of Gem State Game Day.
Simmons to throw. Going deep down the field. He's got a man isolated. Did he catch it? He did. In traffic. What a grab by Guy Wheeler.
Before you head out tonight to cheer on your favorite team, get caught up on the latest news, notes, and previews of tonight's gridiron action.
There's a snap, and it's intercepted at the 10-yard line. That's Bodie Brackenberry. Declo sniffed it out.
Gem State Game Day is brought to you by Idaho Central Credit Union, your local Toyota dealers, and Project Filter.
This one's going to go all the way, 70 yards, no flag, touchdown Valley View. Austin Belknap, 70 yards to the house. Buckle up, here we go.
Hey, that's right. Welcome in to the first postseason edition of Gem State Game Day here on IdahoSports.com, broadcasting live on Tuesday nights throughout the playoffs on the IdahoSports.com YouTube channel, Facebook page, and X account. We know sometimes there's playoff games on Thursday, so we wanted to get these out nice and early for everybody to digest. And of course, you can watch this on replay anytime at the IdahoSports.com YouTube channel, Facebook page, or X account as well. My name is Brandon Bainey, and we have a large panel of experts on the show tonight. Several of them you heard in the intro, some of those signature calls from last year's postseason. Let's introduce them all alphabetically tonight. Let's bring on first, you know him from the Magic Valley Prepcast, our weekly show dedicated to District 4 athletics, Scott Burton. Yo, what's up, Scott?
Well, not the Dodgers at the moment, but hey, we're got 3 games to play with. So that's what I was doing when I was supposed to be prepping and getting ready for all this, is watching the Dodgers getting beat by the Yankees. So we're going to wear this tonight and see if we can go back and get a sweep.
Well, hopefully you're a little more prepared than the Dodgers were this evening.
Brandon, you know me better than that.
Well, the good thing for you, Scott, the Dodgers decided to go with a bullpen game tonight, and we got plenty of fresh arms ready to relieve you if you start to fatigue out there. Let's bring on our next expert. You know him as one of the 2 hosts of the Fighting Taters show. It's kind of our college athletics and that next level based show here on IdahoSports.com. Lucas Gebhardt. Yo, what's up, Lucas?
Hey, how's it going, guys? Happy to be here. And Scott, I hope the Yankees come back and win as a Colorado guy here. As much as I love watching the Dodgers win and win World Series, it'd be nice to spread the love a little bit every now and then. So
we haven't won a World Series since '88. That COVID year doesn't count.
And there's a picture of Lucas from Little Guy Wrestling back in the day.
My wife loves that picture.
Wow.
Loves it. That's an ancient picture. She'll love that you put that one up.
Yeah.
Wow. You still wear that?
I do. Yeah.
Wow. Well, let's bring on our next expert. You know him as one half of the East Idaho Prepcast, our weekly show dedicated to District 5 and 6 athletics, Sean Kane. Yo, what's up, Sean?
No odd pictures. I'm just here to talk a little football, guys.
Well, from odd pictures to a guy who's just odd in general, the owner, the general manager, the guy who signs the checks here at IdahoSports.com, Paul Kingsbury. Yo, what up, Paul?
How's it going, Lucas? I took that picture from it was on the table at your wedding reception, and I put it in my back pocket. Yeah. I was waiting for the right moment. So, I mean, it took years in the making, but it was worth it.
And now on a panel of how many of us are there on tonight and live on social media, you decide to pop it up now.
And I've got one more. Got one more that's I'm going to use later.
Yeah.
Wow. We'll see if we can get it by the end of the show. Let's bring on our last 2 panelists here from the East Idaho Prepcast, the other half, the guy that Sean's constantly having to prop up on the East Idaho Prepcast. I'm just kidding, of course. It's Joel Richardson. What's up, Joel?
Hey, yeah, always being propped up. Yeah, Sean's shoulders are really sore. You know who's not sore? BYU football, baby. 8-0. Los Angeles Lakers are 3-1. Life's good in the Joel Richardson household, man. And East Idaho, 26 teams, right, Sean? Representing in football
26
playoffs.
Big ones.
Yeah, man. Good to be here, guys.
Yeah, we're going to be talking a lot of East Idaho teams tonight for sure. And last, but certainly not least, North Idaho always gets considered last when it comes to statewide affairs. Let's bring on from the North Idaho Prepcast, our weekly show dedicated to District 1 and 2 athletics, Ryan Skaggs. What's up, Skaggs?
I mean, I figured that it was only fitting for North Idaho to be last again because of, we just don't get any respect up here. Yeah. But no, happy to be here tonight. And that singlet photo is absolutely a masterpiece.
Yeah. Oh, that's it was definitely the highlight of the night so far. Hey, if you are watching live tonight and you have an opinion on Lucas's wrestling singlet, but more importantly, maybe the brackets and the matchups, throw them in the chat and we will throw them up on the screen. Here is Sam Buffington, guys. Go Dodgers, Mr. Burton. All right.
That's right. Go Dodgers. So if I look distracted, it's why.
Yeah.
6-4. Still.
Okay, they're creeping back. Scott, if you need to leave to watch them celebrate, we understand. So
oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, okay.
They could close it out tonight.
They could.
We'll vote you off first.
Yeah.
I may be thrown off well before then.
Yeah, that's a JV football picture. That's sophomore year, baby.
Oh my word.
The hair hasn't changed at all.
Wow. No.
Yeah. Hey, how about this, guys, in the chat from Wallace Miners Athletics? Lucas wore it best.
Right. That's right.
Do any of you have your own fat? I found this in Scott's closet one time when I was staying at his house. He had his own fat head made up of himself.
Okay, well, there's a story there. Okay, it's not like I just have that. During COVID, when they wouldn't let anybody in the NFL stadiums, you could actually purchase one of those, and they would put that in a seat, and that's how they got faces in the stands. And so I did it, bought one for the Rams, and so I kind of was at a Rams game-ish.
Oh, I stole it, and I have it now. I'm taking great good care of it.
The sad part is that cardboard cutout still has more personality than Paul. So, all right, now that the roast is officially over, let's get to what the people really came here for, those sweet, sweet state playoff brackets. We'll start at 6A, and then we will work our way down to 1A. We will go through every single matchup in the first round of the playoffs. So just a spoiler alert already, the show's going to be long, okay? Just getting that out of the way with 7 people and 6 classifications to go through. A lot of games. Let's start, guys, with this 6A bracket. The top 4 teams all got byes. That would be Rocky Mountain and Eagle, the 2 teams that played in the SIC championship. Rocky Mountain won that, by the way. Rigby from the east, and it's Coeur d'Alene from the north. But right away, guys, right off the bat, Lucas, we've got an all-Boise matchup in the opening round here. CUNA against Timberline. Now, each of these teams finished in 3rd place in their respective pods during the season, the Rivers and the Foothills division, respectively, but they both got bumped up a seed line because Bora got upset by Capital. And we'll talk about that in just a second during last week's cross-divisional playoff round. But let's start with the CUNA Cavemen here. Lucas, when you look at this Cavemen team, they're 4-5. They're a team that I think coming into the season, people didn't expect much, and then they were a pleasant surprise early, and then they faded a little bit late, but they got a win last week in the cross-divisional playoff game. They seem to be playing pretty good football right now.
Yeah, I mean, they got a win last week in a win against Meridian that they kind of just wore Meridian down as that game went on, and it was mostly through the rushing game that they had. Interesting enough, They lost their starting running back Cameron Hickman late in that game in the 4th quarter. He went out with a pretty serious leg injury. He had to get carted off the field. So I'm not reporting. I'm assuming he's not going to play this week in the playoffs. So they're going to have to rely on some other guys. And this is a ground and pound team. So they're going to have to go to someone else on the ground. But they got the guys to get it done. I mean, you see their sophomore quarterback who distributed the ball very well last week against Meridian. He's kind of a bus driver kind of quarterback. He's, it takes care of the ball, drives the offense down the field. It's a run-first offense, and going up against a Timberline team that they themselves, eked out a win against Hawaii last week. It was such an exciting week here in the Treasure Valley in 6A. We had lots of drama. We had an overtime game. We had CUNA outlasting Meridian here, so it's only fitting that we at least get another SIC matchup in the first round.
Yeah, that great sophomore quarterback, Lino Sanillo, it auto-corrected and put senior on there, but it's Lino Sanio. That's how you say his name. No R in there, that's for sure. And then Lucas, I'll keep it with you since it's another Boise team. On the flip side, you've got the Timberline Wolves, who went 6-3, maybe the best QB receiver duo in the conference that isn't talked about ever, with Jack Brandt and Hudson Lewis. And let's not forget Ian Smart in his 8th year on the Timberline sidelines. He's won a lot of games for the Wolves.
Yeah, won a lot of games, and it's a spot that Timberline, as 6-3 is. That's a great year for Timberline. Might even be one of the best years that Timberline's had under Ian Smart. But it's mostly led through that junior class that you can see there with the quarterback Brandt, and then Hudson Lewis, who's one of the top-rated recruits in next year's recruiting class as he plays out his junior year. But it's a very heavy junior class for Timberline. That doesn't have a whole lot of playoff experience compared to some of the other teams in this bracket. So going to be interesting to see how they kind of respond to the spotlight. They do get them at Donna Larson, which I think does favor Timberline. And instead of having to go to CUNA is a little more kind of a more of a raucous atmosphere, I guess you could say, than you have at Donna Larson. But yeah, Timberline is one of those teams that they had a hot start to the year. They have a strong junior class. Their basketball team was good last year. So they're having one of the best years that they've had in a long time, and they're going to be up and ready to go, especially after beating Hawaii in overtime last week.
Yeah, and kind of an interesting wrinkle, that game against Hawaii was last Thursday, and now Timberline will play on Saturday against CUNA. So they get a couple extra days of preparation there. And the winner of this Timberline CUNA matchup will face, oh boy, another SIC team, Rocky Mountain, in the quarterfinals. Let's jump down to the next seed line, where Post Falls, the second place finisher from the north, they will host Bora. Bora got in the very final playoff slot. It came down to Bora and Hawaii. Bora finished second in their division this year in the Southern Idaho Conference, stubbed their toe in a big way against a Capital team that had only won 2 games prior to last weekend. And so Bora just gets in, and now they've got to travel all the way north, Paul. That is probably, well-deserved for a team that couldn't quite finish in the cross-divisional game.
Yeah, and traveling up north is people complain about it, but the kids love it. I mean, that's what makes state tournaments fun, right? Is that travel, getting there. But for a football team, that travel can be a little bit worse than if you're a basketball team. And that's always something you have to keep in mind with those traveling. One quick comment about that CUNA Timberline: Ian Smart coached at CUNA from 2014 to 16. And so he's a former CUNA guy. They played earlier this year. CUNA lost by 10. Second game of the season. But anyway, I'm from CUNA, so I had to throw that in.
I didn't want to defer to you, the hometown guy, and be accused of bias. So
I've been accused of a lot worse than that over the years, Brandon.
Yeah, I think a key with this Bora team, because last year they leaned on the run a lot with Javon Nelson, and then he graduated, of course. Dylan Lukengay at quarterback has been really solid for Bora this year, has played within the structure of the offense. And so for Bora, yes, they went, now they're 5-4, but let's not forget they did take second in their division. Now they got to travel Ryan Skaggs all the way up north to face the Post Falls Trojans, who went 6-3. This is a team that also likes to run the ball with Devin Burton. They've got a nasty defense. They beat Lake City last Friday night to take the second and final spot from the north. This is a dangerous team at home, and yet Post Falls has lost, I don't know how many home playoff openers in a row the past couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about being snake bitten in the first round. It's, kind of something that I know that they're wanting to shake in a bad way in this, game coming in. I mean, I think they got a pretty tough draw for a 12 seed coming in Bora. That's a team that's pass happy, but I'm thinking as far as matchup goes, if anything lines up well, we know Bora can pass the ball really well, but Post Falls defense on the back end, you and I had them in that the Lakeland game. That backside of that defense is really nice. Their secondary is great. You look at Tyrus Blake back there, leading as a senior at the DB position. But, that's a team also. You look at offensive weapons, not just Devin Burton, but you've got CJ Jimerson at wide receiver. He's 6'3". He can stretch the field on the outside. They've got some nice pieces inside in the slot position too. They run that no huddle offense so well. And they're going to get their chances. I think they're going to test that Bora defense early if the weather is good. I mean, I know we've seen that in years past where the weather just turns to absolute garbage the first week of the playoffs up north. And so far, it looks like it's going to be holding off, hopefully. But, Coach Bennett's a great coach, too, and he's going to have those guys prepared. This is a program that's, we saw them win their first league championship a few years ago and then come in. They, made the playoffs last year and then this year again. But is this the year that they finally climb over the hump and get that first round win? I mean, we've seen them lose how many years in a row in the first round. So I know that these kids are hungry, and talking to a few of the other coaches that they're going to be ready to go Friday night.
Yeah, it's definitely feeling like, put up or what time for Post Falls here at home. The winner of this Bora Post Falls matchup will get Rigby, and that will be a long trip over to East Idaho, no matter who wins that matchup there. Let's highlight now our next matchup. It is Highland, who finished third over in East Idaho's High Country Conference behind Madison and Rigby. They got in as an at-large team, though. There's only 2 at-large bids available. Highland was strong enough to get one of them. The defending champs, though, will have to go on the road every step of the way, and it will start with a road game at Middleton. Paul, Middleton is a team we've seen a lot this year on IdahoSports.com. If we pull up their bio, Bill Brock is one of the longest tenured coaches in all of Idaho football, 25th year. This is a Middleton team that leans on its defense and its running game. Drew Holman had a sensational night rushing the ball last week. This might be a low-scoring affair, like first team to 17 might win this.
It might be. I was at that Middleton Meridian game overtime. Great game. Highland has really gone down this season. And so did they go down to match Middleton, or have they gone down more? Are they going to right the ship this week? I think that's a big question. It's going to be a big test for Highland coming into Middleton. Middleton's just playing well. They're strong. They're tough. Great coaching. I don't know. It's going to be a tough one for Highland to win. I think everything is favoring the Vikings in this one. And I don't hold out the same hope you do that it's going to be really close down the stretch and low scoring. I think Middleton's going to have a pretty good time on the ground.
We shall see. In Middleton, let's remember they're a 5A school, but they chose to play up at the 6A level because they thought they could compete at the state level. They certainly have shown that with the 5-4 record. So Joel, let's turn to Highland, the team on the other side. I mean, the Rams, despite all that negative stuff Paul just said, did go 6-3. The problem is, though, we remember what happened most recently, and they're on a little bit of a slide here. They've lost basically 3 in a row to end the season to Rigby, Skyline, and Madison. Now, those are 3 really good teams, and yet, how do they get this turned around?
Yeah, and you mentioned the 3 in a row. They started strong. I think that's why they didn't get that final last seed. They did come in with a bit higher seed than Post Falls. So good thing they started strong, but they got bit by injuries. They have a lot of younger players. A lot of their older players haven't played a lot. A lot of their seniors that graduated haven't played a lot. So how do you turn this ship around? Well, you're not really leaning on really senior leadership. You're leaning on juniors and sophomores, and they're good, but they're not seniors, right? So I'm worried about Highland in this first round against Middleton, but they have good offense. Their transfer quarterback, he's solid. They have a running game. Their defense is fine, but they played against 3 really good teams out there in the High Country Conference in districts 5 and 6 and 6A. So, but you're going to lean on your junior quarterback. He's played well this year. He got sick. He got injured. I think he's good now to go. But yeah, you're leaning on younger players to turn the ship around, and that's tough.
Yeah, Highland lost all 22 starters from last year's championship team. You'll notice the 3 players we kind of singled out here are all on the defensive side of the ball. That's really where Highland's strength lies. They like to grind it out, play solid defense, and that will be the key to success there. Doug Swanson in the chat has a prediction, guys. He says Middleton by 10. Okay, we'll see.
He's an Eastern Idaho guy.
Yes, and that is from an East Idaho guy for sure. Okay, the winner of this Highland Middleton matchup will get to play Coeur d'Alene. Boy, Highland and Coeur d'Alene have had some epic battles over the years. That would be fun to see that rivalry renewed. But Middleton Coeur d'Alene would also be a fun matchup. Our final first round matchup is Capital at Madison. Now, Capital, Lucas, when we take a look at their resume, I mean, they went 3-6 this year. I always thought their talent was better than they were in so many close losses early in the season. And finally, things have kind of clicked for Kevin Haston in his second year as the Capital coach. They go and upset Bora last week in the cross-divisional playoff round to earn a spot to state. And now Capital's kind of playing with house money, right? Nobody's expecting anything from them.
Yeah, I mean let's be real. They stole a bid and last week when they beat Bora. But guys, here's the thing about Capital: they're 3-6, so they've won 3 of their last 4 games, including a win over Middleton in the last week of the regular season for us in the Treasure Valley a week ago, and a win against Bora last week as well. Bora's a team that started 5-1 and it's a team that's also in this playoff bracket, and Middleton's the other win. They beat Middleton by 1 point, beat Bora by double digits last week. So this is Capital might be, other than maybe Rocky, Capital might be one of the hottest teams in this bracket. I mean, winning 3 of their last 4 coming into the state playoffs, and you see they have a second-year head coach who has them playing their best ball at the right time of year. Not only the best ball over this year, but since he's taken over at Capital. So tough task against Madison, having to go on the road, but you see their 3 seniors there, Marcellus Clay, running back, defensive back, Shepard Fish is one of the best defensive linemen in the state, and Isaiah Teleria, a solid defensive back as well. So they got talent all over the field, and this team is playing with house money, and they're hot, and those teams are always dangerous this time of year.
Yeah, Shepard Fish is committed to the University of Idaho. He's going to play defensive end for the Vandals next season. I'll go to Joel again because, Joel, I know you got to duck out pretty soon. So let's talk about Madison, an 8-1 Madison team. I know I've heard you say it all year long on the East Idaho Prepcast. Madison's strength lies with its offensive and defensive lines. Very impressive.
Yeah, and I've seen him play. I saw him play against Skyline. That game was so close, and Skyline puts up a lot of points, right? They're averaging 20, 30 plus, but Madison shut him down. I mean, they only won by 1 in the end, but Madison's line was massive, and those lines travel, right, guys? Offensive, defensive line. When things aren't going well, you get the push, you get the run game going, which opens up the passing. And on defense, if you can get to the quarterback, if you get to that backfield, it's great. I think this is the best matchup so far in the playoffs with a hot Capital team, and then and Madison coming in with those strong lines. I think this is the most intriguing matchup to start.
It has been a while since Madison's been a big player on the statewide level, so I know the fans in Rexburg are very excited. Doug Swanson says Madison by 14 because they dominate the trenches. This bracket is going to be very interesting. I do think of all the teams in the first round, Madison has, quote unquote, the easier path. None of these paths are easy, but Madison at the very bottom. Then they would have to travel to Eagle in the quarterfinals if they were to get through there. All right, guys, that was the 6A bracket, and hopefully the pace and space, I know that's a basketball term, but hopefully the pace and space was all right. We will take a quick break, and we will come back with the 5A bracket, this big gargantuan 16-team bracket. Everybody's going to get to chime in on this next one. We're back right after this on Gem State Game Day on IdahoSports.com.
A hit in the morning, another between class, after school, and more before bed. Vaping sucks you in quick. Not to mention all the chemicals and health problems everyone's talking about. That's why thousands of teens are ready to take back their life their own way with My Life, My Quit. When you sign up with us, you'll get a free and simple quit plan that makes it easier to stop vaping. Visit mylifemyquit.com or text Start My Quit to 36072.
Back on Gem State Game Day on IdahoSports.com. The entire team is here to break down the 5A state tournament brackets here. Right off the bat, number 1 Skyline against number 16 Nampa. Joel, I'm going to have you break down Skyline, and then you can duck out, all right? Sound good? That's your last assignment tonight. So let's talk about this Skyline Grizzly team that has won 3 of the last 4 state championships, lost in the semifinals last year. They have gone 7-2 this year. They've been pretty much the number 1 team in the media poll and coaches poll most of the season, and they do it with, like every year, athletes.
Yeah. Now, of course, their senior quarterback, Carmine Garcia, their junior wide receiver, Zion Crockett, everything starts with those guys. And if those guys are humming, if those guys are moving, they give a lot of eye candy, a lot of movement, a lot of motion in that backfield. And if that works and they start getting those guys open, getting their playmakers in space, it's usually over for most teams. We just talked about, though, when they played Madison, if you can beat them in the trenches, Skyline, if you can make them work and not get sucked into that eye candy, there's something to be had there for your team. Unfortunately, for Skyline's first opponent, I believe it's Nampa. I don't think Nampa has a good shot in this one. Skyline has been quietly dominating this season, and they start off a little bit quiet because I mentioned quiet because they did play Madison early on in the season. They lost, and we're all like, oh, maybe Skyline isn't so good. They lost in the Rocky Mountain Rumble against that Utah team by 1 or 2 points. So it was this. We were kind of like, okay, who is the Skyline team? But since then, it's been all Skyline. And 5A, it goes through Skyline this year. Bishop Kelly will have something to say about that, right? As the defending champs, Highland as well. Highland's taken off, but Skyline and their 16th year, Scott Berger, it's definitely going through them this year.
I mean, you can set your watch by it. 18 playoff appearances in program history. 14 of the 18 have ended in the semifinals. 10 of the 18 have ended in the championship. 10 times they've been in the championship game. 9 times they've brought home that first place trophy. Coach Scott Berger and the Skyline Grizz just keep rolling along. All right, Joel, thank you so much for all your expert analysis, and good luck the rest of the way. We'll see you later.
Cool. Thanks, guys. Later.
Yep. Bye. All right. So let's talk about the 16 seed. Big matchup here, Paul, for Nampa. Now, Nampa went 4-5. They weren't really the 16th team in the Max Preps rankings because the way this bracket is predetermined, the top 8 seeds automatically go to 8 teams based on district representation. So Nampa really was the 14th best. It's kind of splitting hairs. But Nampa dropped down to 5A this year. They were feisty at the 6A level, but I think 5A is a more natural fit for them. Even though they went 4-5, I think this is a dangerous 16 seed.
It's a dangerous seed, but they're going up against Skyline in Holt, and I think this is going to be a true 1 versus 16. I mean, I'm thrilled to see Nampa in the state playoffs. It's been a while since they've had that greatness, and I love seeing the underdogs make it. It's going to be tough for them. Got senior Connor Campbell at linebacker, did a great job. Good Hernandez following up right there behind him. So they've got the pieces. Ty Thomas, good guy in his first year. Obviously, he's building a program. You can get your program to the playoffs the first year. That creates excitement within the program, and that gets more kids coming, and it builds over time. And I think this is going to be a great building block for the future Bulldog program.
Yeah, and anytime we talk about first-year head coach Ty Thomas for the Nampa Bulldogs, I'm obligated to say that he's a former University of Montana standout football player, Ty Thomas, and former Dillon, Montana native as well. I have it in my contract. I have to mention anytime somebody from the University of Montana does something noteworthy there. So good luck to Nampa in the opening round. Wallace Miners Athletics asks, speaking of Max Preps, oh boy, does the difference in rating on Max Preps predict the outcome of the score? I believe that once upon a time when I was trying to figure out Max Preps, I read that. By the way, good luck going down that rabbit hole. Yeah, we're not going to go too far. I'm going to say no. I don't really buy into anything Max Preps is selling. Generally speaking, yes, the best teams get seated in the best spots. Every once in a while, it gets kind of wonky. And then I don't know. I've kind of given up on the math now that the brackets are out. Like, hey, let's just enjoy the matchups. They are what they are, right, Scott?
They are exactly what they are. We have gone down this rabbit hole so many times, and I'm not sure we know how to get out of it, or if it's ever going to end, for that matter. Because there's always a new question, a new problem, a new head scratcher, and it is what it is.
And I was told this year that number, it caps at 24 points. Teams are like, sorry, we took out one of your starters. We had to go for 50, and that happened earlier this year. But I heard later from another coach or an AD that said, well, we were told by the state that it maxes out at 24 points. So once again, not everybody knows what the hell is going on, unfortunately. So that's the rabbit hole that we're not going to go down because we don't have time.
We'll do another off-season Max Preps deep dive. It seems like we're just do one of those every single year.
Yeah, but you could look at how does the tie-breaking scenario happen. I mean, if you look at 2A, so that's, like you said, that's a rabbit hole. But I want to know how the tie-breaking criteria works in too.
Yep. All right, 21 points is the max differential. There you go. That is from Wallace Miners Athletics. So, okay. Clear as mud. That is for sure. Okay, let's continue on with this humongous 5A bracket. The 8 versus 9 matchup is Lewiston at Twin Falls. Ryan, let's start with Lewiston because according to the Max Preps rankings, they actually should be a top 8 seed. They should be hosting a game instead of having to go to Twin Falls. In fact, Twin Falls was the 15th or 16th lowest rated team. And yet because District 4 automatically gets 2 bids and 2 top 8 seeds, Lewiston's got to go all the way to Twin Falls Friday night. This is a good Lewiston team in their first year playing 5A football after dropping down, Ryan.
Yeah, it is a great Lewiston team. And I mean, we had them Friday night, and Lewiston, they took on Lakeland, which Lakeland played lights out in the second half in that game. But this Lewiston team's got speed on speed. I mean, you look at Cole Arlen at tight end. That kid plays everywhere. He's a Swiss Army knife. He'll line up in the slot. He'll line up in the backfield. He'll go in motion at H-back. He'll be all over the place. He kicks. He does kickoffs. He's got actually a pretty great leg, too. I mean, he can kick field goals. They'll be without Noah Carpenter this week. I'm more than assuming he went out early in the second quarter with an injury against Lakeland. And so, losing Noah at running back, who's a great running back, they're going to lean heavily on the arm of Jeremy Yoder and Nathan King at wide receiver on the opposite side. They've got one of the better, I think, playmakers in North Idaho and Drew Aldridge at wide receiver, 6-foot wide receiver, who is he's great. And I got a chance to watch him with my own eyes. And the one thing that really stood out with this Lewiston team is they are huge. I mean, if you go across their offensive line, they go 6'8", 275, 6'1", 225, 6 foot 240, 6 foot 250, and 6'3", 255. That's on their offensive line. I mean, they are massive, and they're equally big on the defensive front. And that defense flies around. I think they lead 5A football in turnovers caused. They have 2 of the top interception DBs in 5A football with Gage Steiner and Nathan King back there on the back end of that defense. This Lewiston team is great. They're criminally underseeded. I mean, you got a solid matchup with Twin Falls. I think it's going to be favorable for the Bengals to get a win. This is a dangerous team. They get to the second week. I mean, if they start clicking and they get hot, we saw them knock off Coeur d'Alene earlier in the year. This Lewiston team can play with anybody in the state.
Yeah, except that if they get past this one, then Skyline probably awaits. And what a reward for being a top 6 team in Max Preps. You have to go play the number 1 team in the quarterfinals.
Give them a puncher's chance. We saw Lakeland a few years ago take them to the wire. So, I mean, Lewiston, this team's solid.
That's true. All right, Scott, let's talk about Twin Falls, because as much as we were just beating up on the Bruins, I don't think they were actually the 15th or 16th best team. I think they got lower seeded than they should have by the Max Preps formula as well. And I think that played out in that epic, basically district championship game last Friday against Minico. It was a 7-6 final. Twin Falls lost by a single point on a pick 6 by Minico the other way. This is a Bruins team that's 4-4, but they scheduled aggressively. They went to Sandpoint in the opening week of the season. They played Pocatello. They played a really strong schedule, Scott.
They did. And, when you look at this Twin Falls team, they typically have a stud running back, a star quarterback. They have some sort of star. This is a team that really doesn't have that. They're a pretty well-balanced team. They're pretty well disciplined, and they just kind of do their job. I don't think they got a great draw with Lewiston. I think Lewiston is very physical, and all the things that, were mentioned. But that's tough to do. I mean, Twin got a break because they're hosting this game. But when you look at Twin's schedule and you look at their conference, and, we can say the same thing about Minico, you look at the conference, you have got about 3 or 4 games in there that are just snoozers. You're not getting anything out of it, and so Twin had to do what they did, and that's go to Sandpoint, schedule Pocatello, schedule Hillcrest. They had to do those things because they had to find some competition outside their conference. Ben Coring does a good job with these guys, but this is also a team that if they can play defense like they did against Minico, they control the ball. They don't throw it a lot. They throw less than 10 times a game, but they rely on Amos a lot just to move the sticks. And he's averaging right at about 100 yards a game. And so this is a kind of a ball control offense that the style they play well, they're on their game, no matter the weather, no matter what the situation is, they can hang. But like I said, they've got their hands full with Lewiston.
They do have the best cover corner in all of 5A football,
Yes,
and maybe in the state, in Dalton Carter as well. He is.
Yes, they do. Yes, forgot to mention that. That is a game-changing kid that, if you like to throw the football, you don't often hear that in high school football. We got to stay away from this guy. This is a guy you stay away from. But he's a real deal.
For sure. Doug says Lewiston by 14. And here is Brett Coring. I'm going to guess maybe a brother to Ben Coring, Twin Falls head coach. Go Bruins. So yeah, that 8-9 matchup, Twin Falls Lewiston, is going to be a good one. We will have that broadcast for you on IdahoSports.com. Just check the game stream schedule online to see all of the first round playoff games that we will be covering this weekend. Okay, further down the bracket line here, next matchup is the 4 and the 13. It's a couple of old familiar faces. Bishop Kelly, the 4 seed, Pocatello, the 13 this year. Lucas, let's start with Bishop Kelly. They are the defending state champions, and yet they did this last year in the playoffs, and I predicted it would bite them in the butt at some point, and they never did. They just seem to play with fire a lot. Man, everything is always really close to the vest. I mean, they even didn't really put away some lesser opponents in their league. Like Ridgeview was like a 2-possession game. What do we make of this Bishop Kelly team?
Well, I mean, what I make of them is they've lost one game since Chris Kulig's taken over. And so, I mean, this team knows how to win football games. And that one loss they had was to Rigby, which is, you could argue is going to make a run in the 6A bracket as well. So BK is legit, man. I mean, it's another year and BK is going to make another deep playoff run, I think. Their quarterback, Benavila, has a 16-4 touchdown interception ratio. So that's what helps them keep them in these games and helps them win these close games is they don't turn the ball over a whole lot. They got athletes all over the field. They play defense well. They run the ball. With their quarterback, Tyler Cashmere is one of the better running backs in the SIC, probably in the 5A as well. I mean, BK is just, they do this with every sport. They just throw athletes at you. And until they string together more losses in this 5A bracket, they haven't lost to a 5A team yet since Chris Kulig took over.
Yeah, they do have the track record. And of course, Chris Kulig won a lot at Rocky Mountain prior to taking the Bishop Kelly job. And then Sean, on the other side, it's Pocatello. They and Bishop Kelly have had some epic battles over the years, but it's always been later on in the bracket. Pocatello, the 13 seed this year, they really stubbed their toe. They lost to Preston. So Preston, as the number 16 team in Max Preps, got a top 8 seed for being the conference champs from District 5. Pocatello had a couple of they had an overtime win over Blackfoot, or an overtime loss to Blackfoot, where they went for 2 and didn't get it. And then they had an overtime win over Sandpoint, where Sandpoint went for 2 and Pocatello got the stop. It's kind of been of a roller coaster for Coach Dave Spillett and the Thunder this year.
Hey, yeah, I mean, Pocatello is they're in a tough spot, right? Win the district, they're not in such a tough spot having to play Bishop Kelly to start off with. But let's not forget who's leading the Pocatello Thunder. That's quarterback Hunter May. And if you haven't played a dynamic quarterback like that, which I don't know if Bishop Kelly has up in the SIC, Hunter May's the real deal. Hunter May can win games for you. You have Hunter May, Tavin Williams at running back, and then also big receiver Hunter Cordell, who also does punting. This game could come down to, field position and things like that. Hunter Cordell can punt really well and catch big bombs. I think it's a tough matchup to have to go to Bishop Kelly on the road, but the Thunder have a lot of offensive weapons and a very balanced attack when they get that running game going. So if they can go to Bishop Kelly and run the ball, and then Hunter May does his little magic moves in the backfield, I think this is a harder matchup than BK expected first round.
Yeah, that's the flip side of it. BK is probably thinking, geez, we thought we'd get an easier matchup being the 4 seed overall. Doug in the chat says Pokey by 3. Interesting. Okay, I like it. We'll see when Pocatello travels to Bishop Kelly. 12-5 matchup is next, guys. Emmett and Minico. Scott, let's start with the Minico Spartans. They won that game over Twin Falls last week, 7-6. basically came down to a pick six by senior linebacker Will Nielsen. Since Coach Sherm Blaser has come over, they're not quite as one-dimensional as they have been in years past, leaning on the run. And yet, when you've got a running back like Preston Sonner Cranny, you kind of got to feed him, right?
Oh, yeah. This kid, Preston Sonner Cranny, is just one of the toughest kids that you'll ever meet. And he's a great wrestler, which speaks to his toughness. And if, the toothless smile guy, you may just know him by that. But he's such a good football player that, he can really control the ball. Now, we talked about Twin Falls running that type of scheme. Minico, for the longest time, they just had run that double wing, and they got away from it a little bit. They're still a run-first team, and they're a pretty good team. They've got 2 losses on the year, one of them to Bishop Kelly that we just got done talking about, and then the other one to Madison, and the same thing with them. They've had a couple of games in their conference that they just rolled people and didn't get much out of it, but they did schedule themselves well out of conference. And, this is a team that ran into Emmett a couple of years ago in the playoffs and stumbled, and so this is an interesting matchup. And Minico is one of those teams that have had always some really good teams. They just can't get over that hump. And hopefully this is the year that they can get through, because that's always been an Achilles heel for them, is just kind of getting it going in the playoffs.
Yeah, Paul Scott alluded to it. Minico has had their problems with Emmett last year. Emmett came to Minico and won in overtime 34-33. And so I know both sides definitely remember that. Paul, this is an Emmett team that's 6-3. They love to run the football, and they've been running a lot this year with their quarterback, Ryder Scheibe. They've got Sam Buck up front leading that offensive line. This is just a tough, gritty, hard-nosed football team.
I think you just described every team Emmett has had for the last 20 years. I mean, that's just what they do at Emmett. They grow tough kids. And Sam Buck, we watched him come through the ranks. And Emmett and Coach Hargett, you're not going to get a really better football coach, football-minded coach. I think Emmett is in the middle of the pack, and they did what a team in the middle of the pack does. They beat the teams they were supposed to, and they lost to the teams that they, quote, were supposed to. And so hitting the playoffs, Emmett needs to really decide to not be a middle of the pack team. And I think it's going to be that confidence that gets them over that hump. If they can win this week, is getting past all those losses to teams that they think they should have beat this year, but didn't. And anything can happen in the playoffs. You're 6-3. You're going into it, a lot of confidence. I'd love to see the Huskies pull out a win.
Yeah, Emmett lost that 18-14 game to Valley View when Onyx Carson scored with like 10 seconds to go. And that was the difference between hosting a playoff game this week and having to go on the road for the Huskies. That's just the way it goes. But they're comfortable being road dogs. They've done it in the past for sure. Okay, so that's the top half of the bracket. If we go to the bottom half of the bracket now, Hillcrest is the 2 seed. Sandpoint, the 15. Hillcrest took second in their own conference, and yet they're the number 2 seed overall. Doug in the chat says first round history tells us Emmett by 10 for that last game. So he's calling a second consecutive upset special. Paul, are you jotting down all of Doug's picks as he's going along here? You're going to see how right
I'm jotting down notes, but I haven't been jotting down his picks.
Gotcha.
I'll have to go back and do it, but I am jotting down notes.
Okay. Hey, Sean, how about this? Head coach of the Hillcrest Knights, Brennan Mossholder in the chat. Go Knights. See everyone Friday night. And Doug says, yes, Hillcrest is scary. Wow. Okay. Mind your P's and Q's, Sean. Coach Mossholder is watching. This is a really fun, really dynamic Hillcrest team.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Hillcrest, let's, not mince words, right? Sweetwood, senior quarterback, 1,474 yards, 12 TDs, 9 interceptions. He's got a big arm. He can throw the ball. I mean, Hillcrest's only loss to teams that we've already talked about, Madison, Skyline, and Rigby. That's their only losses. Those are 3 teams that could be playing very late into the playoffs. So the Hillcrest Knights are a very balanced team. Their offense can get going in big numbers, and they're led by Sweetwood as quarterback. I think it's going to be, can they get an offensive rhythm, and can Sandpoint come up with enough defense to stop the Hillcrest Knights? I've had coaches tell me, that the Hillcrest Knights could beat a lot of 6A teams this year, and that's from other conference teams within District 6. So Hillcrest comes in very high. I think the only knock for Hillcrest is they have to play, Skyline, which is also extremely, extremely good this year. But yeah, the Hillcrest Knights, I think, have a good chance of playing deep into the playoffs.
Yeah, Jace Judy has been balling out this year. They've got a good offensive line led by Michael McCartney at offensive tackle. Tyson Sweetwood, only a junior. So I probably had that mistyped. And he had to come in during the state championship game last year against Bishop Kelly. The starting quarterback, Peyton King, got hurt.
Championship game.
Started it. King had gotten hurt the week before, and Sweetwood had started. So he's got that big game experience under his belt already.
Remember last year against Skyline, they put Sweetwood in. He hits Isaac Davis for that game-winning touchdown in the regular season because he had the big arm. So he's capable of big moments and big plays for sure.
Yep. Okay. The 15 seed here, Ryan Skaggs, is Sandpoint. They went 3-6 this year. Some tough injury luck. Some guys they were counting on have been in and out of the lineup. They had to replace some really dynamic, like Max Frank, who was a great running back receiver combo guy for them. They have gotten into some big shootouts this year. The defense has been a little leakier than we're used to seeing at Sandpoint High. But what do you make about this Bulldogs team?
It started really promising, and they kind of once they hit that pokey game and they started getting the injury bug going through that program, the wheels kind of fell off the wagon there. Finishing with 4 straight losses to close out the year. That's something that you don't really see from a Coach Knowles coached team. I mean, he's a great head coach here in North Idaho, and they've had a run of success, and it's just kind of weird seeing Sandpoint sitting on a 15 line. That just for me kind of looks odd, but this is still a group that's got talent out there. I mean, you look at the guys that are there, McElroy, Turner, and Wimmer. I mean, those guys flat out can fly around on the field. Turner will play both ways at times too, so there's talent there. It's just, I mean, they've been so snake bitten with injuries within the group, getting any continuity within the offensive line or quarterback and receiver. I know that they've rotated quarterbacks at times throughout the year. They opened with a big win against Twin Falls. They took, Pokey to the wire, losing that game by 1 in a shootout, 49-48. And then since then, it's just been, getting consistency. They played Lewiston tough. But they couldn't close out the Bengals a few weeks ago, and then they got blown out by Lakeland. But this is a team that, if things are clicking and they get healthy, they're as good as anyone in 5A. But that's just been the problem for them. They haven't been healthy lately.
Yeah, and they do have to start fast against Hillcrest if they want to hang in there and compete. Doug says Knights by 21. That is his biggest prediction so far in the chat. As we make our way down this 5A bracket, next up is the 10-7 East Idaho rivals, Blackfoot and Preston. Sean, the floor is yours. Preston, the district champs. Where do you want to start, Preston or Blackfoot?
Let's start with Preston. Well, and again, this is a week 1 matchup, right? Preston and Blackfoot have already played. Blackfoot won that game 34-28, but let's start with Preston, who's just been on a tear with Carter Perry, the sophomore quarterback. An amazing story from that young fellow there who fought cancer, kept practicing through his cancer treatments, and got in as quarterback as a freshman last year and playing unbelievably well. He's leading a lot of quarterback categories throughout the state. 2,148 yards, 20 TDs, 11 interceptions. He's just phenomenal. Connor Iverson, the running back, is also just ground and pound, phenomenal running back. They're just playing hot right now, the Preston Indians. They're on a 3-game winning streak, winning the district title the first time since 2010. They're hot, and it's a hot team, and they're going to play a Blackfoot, which is another team that has been very interesting as well.
Yeah. Blackfoot with a first-year head coach, Josh Stewart, who came over from Declo in the offseason. So Coach Stewart has taken Declo on many deep runs, and Blackfoot has the better overall record, right? 5-4 versus 4-5 for Preston, and they've got some good athletes.
Yeah, Blackfoot, extremely a tough team. I was saying earlier that Blackfoot's the team you don't want to play in the first round because projected it looked like it might be a Pocatello Thunder Blackfoot. rematch, and that would have been interesting as well because Blackfoot beat Pocatello Thunder in overtime 29-28 earlier in the year. But yeah, Blackfoot, finished the season with a win over Shelley. They lost an overtime game to Thunder Ridge. They've kind of been all over the place, but they run the ball extremely well. And, can the Preston defense stop the running game of the Broncos? I think that's the big key. And can the Broncos stop the passing game of Carter Perry? I think those are the key matchups. And I think this is a very competitive first round match, maybe one of the best first round games on this gigantic list.
Yep. Okay. We are streaming on Instagram. We are getting some comments in from Instagram. Kenty B09. Do you think any of these teams will run the pick six play Tim Walls talked about the other day? My bet is whoever runs that play the most wins. I don't know if you guys saw this or not, but Tim Walls, who's on the Democrat ticket for vice president, he played Madden against Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez on Sunday while everybody was watching live NFL games. These guys were playing Madden on Twitch to an audience of nobody. And then they were talking about, oh yeah, I can run the pick six play and we know how to call an audible, and just like non-football terms for sure. So nobody's running the pick six play. We're all, adept at the game of football here in the state of Idaho. Doug wants to know Blackfoot schedule versus Preston schedule. Blackfoot probably a little more battle tested, Sean, right? Playing Skyline, Hillcrest, Bonneville, etc.
I mean, if you look at just their classification, right? Yeah, Blackfoot plays Pocatello. They play Hillcrest and Skyline, which are the top two teams. And then they also have that Madison team, which is also very dominant. And they played Thunder Ridge, another one-up classification. They did lose that game 33-35 in overtime, but had chances to win. So I would say Blackfoot has played a little stronger of a schedule.
And yet, common opponent, they beat Pocatello in overtime. Preston blew out Pocatello and took it to them. So Doug says Blackfoot by 7. Okay. We are getting there to the end of this big, huge bracket, guys. We're almost there. Number 3, Lakeland. Number 14, Shelley. Ryan, let's start with Lakeland, just to give Sean a break here. This is a Lakeland team you and I have been very high on this year. We saw them in their second game of the season. They're 7-2. All the hallmarks of a classic Lakeland team. They run the ball extremely well with Lovey Weil, and they lean on their defense to make plays.
Texas and Lakeland having a running back that leads the state in rushing. I mean, that's kind of where we're at with them. But, I mean, if there's stock on this team, I'm buying all of it. This team, I watched them Friday night. What they did to that Lewiston team was just flat dominant. And that defense absolutely flies around. And we talk about Cashland and Carter Vanek. Vanek up front, I mean, he's just an imposing figure. He's 6'4", 280. Plays guard, and he just rips dudes' heads off when he pulls. I mean, it's a thing of beauty to watch. If you're a smash mouth football guy, this is the team that you love to watch. The thing that I think gets a little undersold is Benson at quarterback. Everybody starts Lewiston focused so heavily in the first half on Lovey Weil at running back, and who still rushed for 161 yards in the game against the Bengals. Benson went off, and he was very capable throwing the ball. I mean, you can't pack the box against Lakeland, try to throw 8-9 guys up front, and they're going to throw, they'll throw the ball on you, and they'll go over the top. I mean, they've got Burmeister on the outside. Jace Taylor, wide receiver, is one of the more unsung hero wide receivers in North Idaho. He can flat scoot. So this is a team that, I mean, if there's stock in them, what their offensive line and defensive front's able to do, they're so well coached too. You could talk about Coach Schroeder, but then you look at the position coaches behind them with Tim Kiefer running that defense. And then you've got guys like Court Milks and Tim Anderson and Coach Bavacqua and the others that are in there. Like, this is a team that, I mean, they're loaded. And I look at them, of all the teams they've had to make playoff runs, this one's looking really, really dominant right now coming into the playoffs.
Yeah, they'll welcome in a Shelley team that's the 14 seed overall. Sean, I pride myself on like having a finger on the pulse for all of these teams. This was the one team I have no idea. There's been no media reports from any of the East Idaho media on Shelley. I tried watching some film of their first game of the year against Preston. They were running triple back. basically like Maryland I. And then I looked at their film from like a game against Bonneville in October, and it was the opposite. It was like a shotgun spread with wide receivers. Jason Bird, first-year head coach, they really can play a diverse style of offense and defense.
Yeah, the Shelley Russets, they've got, Austin Cannon. He's a big-time contributor at linebacker. The Shelley defense can play very well, but, I mean, here's the deal. I think Shelley has to find a way to score. They did beat Preston earlier in the season. They beat Century, and they beat Idaho Falls, which are teams that are not in the playoffs. And Shelley's going to have to find a way to score. Most of their games throughout the year, they've gotten down by too many early, and it's just not enough. So can Shelley find a way to hold Lakeland? I don't know. They've got a lot of offensive players, the Hawks do, but Shelley will have to find a way to tighten up the defense and then also get something produced, whether they want to do that heavy set run or throw the ball in the shotgun, but they're going to have to find a way to score.
Yeah, it's just a hard team to get a read on for sure. Doug says the Shelley run defense will surprise them, but he'll say Lakeland by 14. And here's Jason Weil, go Hawks. The Weil family shared the story of how Lovey got his name. Paul, I think you were the one who took the message, right? It centers around Lovey Smith, the former Chicago Bears head coach.
Yeah, I took the message, but Ryan is the one that should get the accolades because he was the one talking about on air, and the kid actually heard it and really appreciated it. So Ryan, you take it. It was an NFL Super Bowl watch that really got him that, right?
Yeah. So when he was a kid, the Bears were playing in the Super Bowl, and as far as what I got from the message from that you sent, it was like the grandfather who was a Bears fan, and and then it just kind of went from there. That Lovey was the nickname that Cage took, and it stuck, and I think it's one of the cooler names in high school football. I mean, there's a few other kids out there. I think that Sandpoint's got a kid with the last name Beers, which is pretty rad. But we'll have our all name team in the 8-man prepcast. I know that, but yeah, there's some awesome names. But I mean, he's even a better kid, and he just plays extremely hard. He's just an awesome. He's fun to watch. You think you got him bottled up, the next thing you know, he's going for 50.
Yeah. And Scott, I hear the name Lovey and I think of like Gilligan's Island. That's the first place I go.
Wow. That is impressive. I thought of Lovey Smith, the defensive coordinator for the Rams back in the day before the Bears head coach. So I take it all the way to my guys.
Yeah.
My Rams.
For sure. All right. Last matchup in this 5A bracket, guys. It is number 11, Bonneville, at number 6, Valley View. Lucas, this is a Valley View team. Shea McClellan in his first year as the head coach. He previously was at Marcine. Speaking of NFL bona fides and Chicago Bears, Shea McClellan was an excellent linebacker at Boise State, and then in the NFL with the Chicago Bears and the New England Patriots. Turns out he's a pretty good coach, too. He's gotten Valley View to a 6-2 record. Onyx Carson is the bell cow back. He has rushed for over 1,000 yards this year. They lean on him a lot in the run game. Isaac Moore is a really fantastic dual threat quarterback as well. This is just a good, solid Valley View team.
It is. And we talked a few minutes ago about how Bishop Kelly had kind of snuck by a lot of their opponents in their conference schedule. Well, Valley View is the team that's kind of winning these games by 2-3 scores. I mean, they beat Columbia 42-0. They beat Nampa by a couple of scores, a 4-point win against Emmett. Only lost to Bishop Kelly by 7, too. So you realize that Valley View's 2 losses are that 7-point loss that we just said to Bishop Kelly, and the only other one is to 6A Bora. And this Valley View team, I think, is legit. They've won 6 games coming into the state playoffs. They have a bell cow running back that's running for over 1,200 yards, averaging 150 yards a game. And the defense is much improved over what it was last year under Shea McClellan, who, when you have a guy like that who's played the level of football that McClellan has in the NFL and high level at Boise State, a big name, obviously, here in the Treasure Valley, kids listen to that. And this Valley View team has really turned a corner this year. I like Valley View a lot. We talked about stock, and this is a team I want stock in right now. This is a buy low, sell high scenario here with Valley View. I like Valley View a lot coming into the playoffs.
Yep. And then Sean, on the other side, we have Bonneville. They went 4-5, but again, they play in an extremely rigorous conference. They have a first-year head coach in Shane Stevenson. Tivon Sakaguchi is a big tight end, like 6'6", 6'7", really moves well for a big guy. But kind of the same. They have a lot of athletes. They really lean on their defense. What do you think about this Bonneville team?
If Bonneville can keep the game close, I think they could find a way to win. When they've kept games close and their defenses hold teams in check, they've been able to win games, and they've come away with some pretty thrilling games, like an overtime win over Thunder Ridge, 17-14. But they have to keep it close. If they let the game get out of hand, it's hard for them to come back offensively. But if their defense can play strong, it allows them to keeping games. And if you can keep that point total close between Valley View and Bonneville, Bonneville finds a way to win in really close games.
Yep, for sure. In the chat, a couple of comments here from Jeb Harrison. Lots of good teams in 5A this year. I agree. This bracket seems to be fairly wide open. Doug wants to know how many points has Valley View scored this year. They are averaging just under 30 points per game, 29.3 points per contest. So that's where Valley View is there. All right, guys, we'll just keep it rolling. 4A bracket, only 4 matchups to talk about mercifully on this bracket, guys. First one is McCall Donnelly at Snake River. Snake River was the District 5 champion. McCall Donnelly took 4th in a very tight, very competitive Snake River Valley Conference that also has Fruitland and Weiser and Homedale. Weiser and Homedale, you'll notice, have first-round byes along with Sugar, Salem, and Kimberly. For the first time, the top 4 teams, according to Max Preps, got the first-round byes, which meant multiple teams from the same conference could get the bye if they were good enough, and that's what happened here. Paul, you went to McCall last year for their playoff opener against Buell. It was a snowy, slushy type of game. This time, McCall Donnelly's got to head east, but really, 6-3, and their 3 losses, like I said, were to Homedale, Weiser, and Fruitland.
Yeah, and that Homedale and Fruitland loss, they were the last 2 games of the season. That's rough. They soundly beat Cole Valley. They soundly beat Payette. Lost a close, low-scoring game to Grangeville. But when I was looking at the brackets kind of forming, I kind of saw maybe that Buell McCall happening again, and I'm like, oh no, they're gonna want me to go up there again. There was no slush involved. It was ice. The top of the press box had about 6 inches of snow on it. We had buddy heaters at our feet. It was a cold game in McCall that night. Can McCall get past the first round? I don't know. Maybe. I'm looking at Snake River, and I think Snake River is, an 8 seed versus 9 seed. Anything can happen. Snake River has that history behind them. But McCall, maybe they want it more, and I think it's going to be one of the better games on the bracket for sure.
Maddox Arnold's got a big arm at quarterback, and that the snow really affected, I think, what McCall Donnelly wanted to do last year. So maybe the weather will help him out this time around. And for Sean, here's Snake River. They've got the pedigree, obviously, 9 championships in school history. They've had some quarterback injuries this year, but Bryden Mortensen is back, the junior trigger man. Johnny Walker, not just a great whiskey, folks. He is a great wide receiver and defensive back, and he actually took over at quarterback because of some injuries. He was basically the emergency QB. The second string guy also got hurt, led him to a win over Marsh Valley. So this is a team just full of athletes.
Yeah, definitely a team that quietly has done really well. We talk about regular schedules, right? Snake River started out with Homedale, Sugar, Salem, and Kimberly. It was a gauntlet for Snake River to start the season, but then quietly they've just pretty much went on to win every game except their last game against Preston, up a classification. But yeah, if they're healthy and playing well, you have Johnny Walker, also plays very good defensive back position, which that can disrupt the passing game of the other team very much. So I like Snake River. I think it's a good seed for them. I think they did a great job this year, and I think they've got a good chance of going on to the next game.
Yeah. In the comments here, Jeb Harrison, and he would know about Snake River, obviously. McCall Donnelly gave Weiser lots of problems. Jeb now coaching with Yeah, well, he's coaching with Tom Harrison at Weiser, but both of them have coached at Snake River in past lives as well. McCall Donnelly gave Weiser lots of problems. They could have easily won the game versus Weiser. Really good defensive line and middle linebacker. I talked to Tom Harrison. He said McCall gave them all they could handle. And Johnny Walker's name is actually Top Shelf.
Hey, Jeb.
I like that. I like that a lot for sure. Okay, moving on in this bracket, guys. The next matchup in the 4A opening round is Teton at Fruitland, the 12 at the 5. Lucas, Fruitland had an interesting season where they started hot. They had that big win over Kimberly in the season opener. And then they just got into the rigors of conference play and dropped a game to Weiser, hotly contested game to Homedale as well. But with Jordan Gross, former NFL offensive tackle and Fruitland alum, leading the way, a 7-2 year, and basically the best at-large seed, pretty nice season.
Yeah, offensively, I mean, this is a team that's scored, 50, 60 points at times in the game, but it's also a team that got shut out by Weiser a couple weeks ago, which is my only eye test that I have so far this year for Fruitland is that game against Weiser. They made a lot of mistakes in that game, turned the ball over a couple times, and was probably Fruitland's sloppiest game of the year. And it just so happened to come against a really good Weiser team. Now, that being said, I think Fruitland's a lot better of a team than what they showed that night. They went out the following week on a nice win against McCall to close out the regular season. They come into state with a 7-2 record. I do think they have one of the best quarterbacks in this classification, Tyus Vidlac. I mean, there's not a lot of teams that have gunslingers in this classification back there, but Vidlac's one of them. And he's got a buddy there in Coy Kaufman that he loves to throw the ball to. Kaufman in that game, I think, was close to maybe 7 or 8 catches, targets Kaufman a lot. They got a nice change of pace back. Kid Test, that they call him, is a nice change of pace back that they have there, that these kind of could be catch the ball out of the backfield as well kind of player as well. So Fruitland, to me, it's, again, going off that eye test a couple weeks ago, it's what kind of team are we going to see? Are we going to see a team that made the mistakes they did against Weiser, or are we going to see a team that scored 61 against Coal Valley Christian? That's kind of what I'm looking at in this game.
Yeah. And Sean, for Teton, big asterisk. The Timberwolves are 2-6. Yes, they were 0-6, and then they won 2 in a row. Or they were 0-5 and won 2 of their last 3 heading into the playoffs. They did lose to Sugar Salem last week. Big asterisk, though, because for the first half of the season, no Jack Joyce, all-state running back, and was, I think, the state's leading rusher last year. He was definitely top 5. He is back now, and that changes Teton's dynamic a little bit.
Yeah, I think Teton with Jack Joyce back there, and that's a name you heard all last year. It's a different Timberwolves team, right? I think they're a little younger team than last year that went to the state final, but they've been trying to figure out how they're going to play, I think, through the season. And unfortunately, when you're trying to do that, you lose games, and so the record's not amazing. But towards the end of the season, I think they played well. They also have a very tough opponent in their own conference in Sugar Salem. And, they had a tough time with them. But if Jack Joyce is playing, I think you've got a much more dynamic offense. And hopefully that will help, because as of right now, they've just been giving up too many points on the defensive side.
Yep, for sure. In the chat here, Jeb says, "What's up, Sean?" And Jeb actually coaches at Blackfoot. Sorry about that. I got all my Harrisons mixed up there. And we're glad to have you on board watching tonight as well, Jeb. Appreciate it. Okay, continuing on the bracket here, bottom half of the bracket for 4A. Marsh Valley at Buell. Scott, I need you alert and ready. All right. We've got another Magic Valley team here to break down. This is a Buell team that's had a lot of fun this year. We famously picked them to lose to Weiser in our pick 6 earlier this year. All 6 of us picked Weiser to defeat Buell. Buell went on the road and got that win. And then all the players came on Gem State Game Day the next week and let me have it. This is a fun group, and they seem a little more relaxed than they've been in years past. And 6-2 season, fantastic year for Buell.
No, it really has been, and this particular 4A division, we talk about it all the time, is just got some beasts of teams in there. And you start talking 4A, you're talking Homedale and Weiser and Fruitland and Kimberly, and Buell has just kind of been on the outskirts looking in, just saying, how do I get into this, and here they are. And that win that you just talked about kind of put them on the map a little bit. This is a Buell Indian team that's really, really solid. I mean, they're led by, Zach Azevedo, their junior quarterback, who doesn't sling the ball around a lot, but he manages the game well. And, you look at their other kids, Finley is leading with almost 900 yards on the ground. But this is an aggressive defense that will get after you. They are not afraid to come after the quarterback. They are not afraid to take chances in the secondary. And if you fall asleep against these guys, they'll make you pay, because they're a physical, aggressive defense. And anytime you can play that style that Buell does, then you're going to be in all your games. I mean, their losses this year, one of them was to Kimberly, and that was kind of a thumping 42-7. But this is a really good Buell football team.
Yeah, it's a group. Josh Creasy in his second year coaching the team. In the middle of the season, he and his wife delivered a baby daughter, so that was a big, exciting moment. And I think a couple of weeks ago, she actually got out to her first Buell High varsity football game as well, which was kind of a cool moment for the Creasy family as well. And then, if we take a look at the bracket and we talk about, who's Buell going to match up with at home, it is Marsh Valley, Sean. The Marsh Valley Eagles, who went 5-3, but some head scratching, like they competed well with Snake River, then they turn around and lose to American Falls. I will say this, with first-year coach Jared Michelson, they seem to be in a better spot than they were a year ago when they made the playoffs, but it was like with a 2-6 record.
Yeah, I mean, the Eagles have a winning record now. Cooper Bowman as their quarterback, defensive back, has been doing a great job. They've had a lot of coaching changes. I think that's hard for the kids, the players, to get what needs to get done. But I think as the year's going, they've played a lot better. And they're a team that is built to travel, right? Being in Marsh Valley, you're always going to have to travel probably far to play a game. So, I kind of like the Eagles here. I think they've got a lot of good pieces, and it'll just be see if they cannot allow as many points as they have been. They're a little up in their point differential. They score more than their teams, but just by 8. And so if they can keep the team they're playing down in the scoring, I think they have a good chance to win.
Yeah, it'll be a fun battle for sure. Here is Coach Jared Michelson, guys, head coach of the Marsh Valley Eagles. Look out for the Eagles on Friday night. Marsh Valley day and night difference when you watch them from last year to this year with a lot of the same athletes. Isaac says, go Eagles as well. Jeb says American Falls and Marsh Valley are much better than years past, and we'll get to American Falls here in a second. And then he adds, Marsh Valley is a sleeper. New coach is doing a nice job. Had the Belknap kid, that's Keaton Belknap, not transferred to Highland, Marsh Valley could have been a serious contender. He's now quarterbacking the Rams at the 6A level. If you can play West Side tough, I don't care what division, they can play. Yes, and Marsh Valley did battle West Side very tough in a non-conference battle earlier this season. Our final matchup on the 4A bracket is American Falls at Moscow Friday night. Ryan, Moscow dropped down a level. They should be a 5A school. They're playing 4A football for competitive reasons. Their program has been in dire straits the past couple of years. Based upon a 7-2 record, it's probably going to be a very brief stay at the 4A level, and they're going to get kicked right back up.
They're going to have to go back up to the IEL, but you got the law firm of Isaacson and even Kiblin in there and Velasco at quarterback. I mean, that's a good tandem. You throw in Keaton Fry on offense. They've got some dynamic weapons to the Bears on offense, and they actually got a pretty nice offensive line. I got a chance to watch them when they played Timberlake a few weeks ago. This is a different Moscow team than what we're used to seeing. I mean, this team can flat spin it. Velasco's a gunslinger. I mean, you talk about what he's able to do with his offensive stats, pretty gaudy throwing the ball this year for the Bears. Some people criticize them a little bit for scheduling light on the front end, and it did probably affect their Max Preps rankings a little bit, but they beat some decent teams and some teams that are going to be going to the playoffs in the state of Washington. So, this Moscow team does have some nice wins under their belt, and under Coach Bayfus has done a great job with this group. And defensively, they're not necessarily the deepest team, but they are ball hawks. They force turnovers. This team can play. So it'll be interesting to see how things go for them Friday night as they take on American Falls, a team that's a little bit different than what we saw last year, but I'll let whoever else is going to break that one down. But this Moscow team, I look at them and, if they can get a win Friday night, they're not an easy out by any means, just because that offense can score points.
Well, breaking down American Falls for us, who else but Sean? It's the Sean Kane show tonight because there's so many teams.
It's about time.
Idaho in this bracket. Hey, Lucas, real quick, I wanted to ask, you were at the 5A or the 4A state baseball tournament this past spring where Moscow had that incredible championship run. I know Isaacson was the MVP of the tournament, right?
He was, yeah. And it was, if I remember right, it's what he did on the mound and as well in the field. And yeah, I mean, that was an incredible run that Moscow had in that 4A, now 5A tournament, even though Moscow stays at 4A. But Isaacson was a big part of that state championship baseball team, which was their first championship in school history in baseball. So that was pretty neat to watch.
We'll see if the good vibes can continue on to the football field. All right, Sean, American Falls 5-4. They've got so many good athletes on this team. And this is the same thing. Tim Hoppy in his third year took over a program that was in shambles and has built them up, got them to the playoffs last year where they had to go all the way north to Timberlake, slightly less north this year to Moscow, but I think a much better team overall than they were a year ago.
Yeah, definitely. We talk about if you can, play a team, right? American Falls played Aberdeen, their cross, a couple of miles down the road rival, and only lost 18-20. And if you can take Aberdeen, which we'll talk about as a very good team, the distance, you're a good team as well. And they've played teams very well this year. They only lost to Snake River, 12-14, and they ended up, beating Marsh Valley in the last game of the year, which, it's hard to gear where these Marsh Valley and American Falls are, but playing very well at the end of the season and played some tough teams very well.
Yeah, I've been pretty impressed with American Falls and how they have continued to progress. A couple of comments in the chat here from Jeb Harrison again, and he knows this classification well. Moscow can sling it, they can score, and he adds, no team in West Idaho or Southeast Idaho has any idea what Moscow can do. That's a big advantage. Yeah, kind of out of sight, out of mind. That's a big advantage that the teams from the North all have this time of year. All right, guys.
Them and Fruitland, probably the only two, maybe Sugar. I haven't seen Sugar yet this year, but if Moscow can sling it like Ryan's talking about, I mean, it's them and Fruitland, Sugar, probably the only teams that can play from behind. Look at a team like Weiser, right? Which is if there's anyone on the Weiser bandwagon, it's me. I've seen them beat Homedale. I've seen them beat Fruitland. I'm sold on Weiser. You don't got to convince me on Weiser, but I mean, that's a team that if they fall behind, they could be in trouble, but it's not necessarily the case with Moscow. So it's a good point there by Jeb.
Yep, definitely. All right, guys, let's move to what I think is the most wide open bracket of any classification, and that is Scott's favorite, Class 3A, where we have the Aberdeen Tigers getting ready to host the Priest River Spartans. Scott, since the lone Magic Valley team in this bracket, Declo, got a first-round bye, I will let you talk about some of their league mates like Aberdeen. This team beat Declo earlier this year, 6-0. This league was crazy, Scott, with Westside and Declo and Aberdeen. They all kind of beat up on each other, right? Declo beat Westside, Aberdeen beat Declo, Westside beat Aberdeen. All three play really strong defense. And look at that. Aberdeen went 7-1 this year, Scott. Their only loss was to Westside, which we're going to talk about in just a second.
Yeah, Aberdeen is just kind of one of those feel-good stories, too, because, you talk about, their quarterback, Lupe Ortiz, who had to step in kind of a difficult situation last year, and all he did was just turn them into winners. And, under first-year head coach Derek Jolly, these guys are good, and they're good on both sides of the football. They have really kind of etched out a little bit of the reputation for themselves as being just a team to beat. Because when you think about this, this classification, Aberdeen is not one that kind of goes to the forefront of your mind, but this year they do. And I really do like their quarterback. Boy, is he's quick. He's tough to tackle. He's athletic. And it begins and ends with him.
Yeah, Lupe Ortiz had to take over last year. Just a great athlete. The one thing I always, and I've said this all year with Aberdeen, is the numbers are so small. They're very thin on the margins. So if any of their key players go out, it can really affect what Aberdeen wants to do. On the other side, here's the other feel-good story. Ryan, Priest River making only their 4th playoff appearance in school history. They didn't even have a varsity team last year. They played kind of a hybrid varsity JV schedule. Let's be honest, that school was kind of a bleep show last year, not because of what was going on with the superintendent and all of that stuff. And it's not the fault of anybody involved with the football team or on the staff, but just from the very top with the superintendent that's now not there anymore. Priest River is kind of getting back to normal a little bit. And we see, if there's not that off-field circus going on, this is a really good team.
Yeah. And ladies and gentlemen, I will introduce you to Sawyer Stout, a running back. If you haven't heard of him, you may get to know him Friday. He's a pretty dynamic running back, and people don't really talk about Priest River too much. They've flown under the radar, and making the playoffs at 6-2 is absolutely huge for this program. And, they're pretty balanced. I mean, well, as far as they're run heavy, but I say balance on the defensive side of the ball. They force turnovers. I don't know if they've got, I think 5 guys on the team have at least 1 interception. Leighton Goins, the Mike Backer, who is a freshman, leads the team in interceptions, but he also leads the team in tackles. I mean, they've got youth on this team. They're going to be good for years to come. I think, they're surprising folks a little bit this year, but I knew that folks were saying, hey, watch out for Priest River in the next few years. Well, their coming out party, it kind of showed up this year, and they've been dominant. They'll run the ball really, really heavy. They got, Stout at running back, and then Feger at the other sophomore running back. He's kind of a slot back hybrid guy. He rushes for close to 100 yards a game. And then, they'll pass it maybe 7-8 times, but they'll go for, 50, 60 yards. There's one of those sneaky teams, but this is a team that, you can't sleep on Priest River. A program on the way up, which is absolutely awesome to see, just like you said, with all of the circus that was going on behind the scenes at the administrative district level. It's awesome to see them in and see them having success, which really we were kind of down on the CIL this year as a league, and turned out to be, you get 2 teams in. I mean, this is awesome for Priest River to make it in and, to punch their ticket. This is a group that, you can't snooze on this team at all.
Yeah, Sawyer Stout, over 1,000 yards rushing, over 20 rushing touchdowns. That is a new school record at Priest River. The previous record holder set it back in 2000. So, almost 25 years ago. That's really awesome to see from Priest River. A couple of comments here. Here's Jeb Harrison keeping it 100, Lucas, with your Weezer bandwagon talk. And here's our good friend Max Oswald from the Bonner County Daily Bee. He's been on the Priest River.
Do the intro for Priest River. Max is he's the Iron Man.
Yeah, he does. He covers Bonner's Ferry now and Sandpoint and Priest River and Clark Fork, and covers the beat really well for all these teams. He says Priest River might be the most underrated team in 3A. They broke every team and individual school rushing record this year and broke multiple defensive records, including the most forced turnovers in a game with 7. They passed the eye test for me. Their unique Georgia Tech / Army style offense is super hard to predict. Yeah, look out. Honestly, Priest River, Aberdeen both love to run the ball. That game could, like, the over-under for time might be 1 hour and 10 minutes, and then the game might be over. It might be 7-6
before 8 o'clock in that one.
Yeah, for sure. This Gem State game day might go longer than the game itself. I'm trying to go quickly, guys. I promise. Let's go with Marsing and Ryrie. Paul, this is a rematch of a game we saw earlier this year in Marsing, but now it flips to Ryrie. This is the first home playoff game for Ryrie in school history. But let's talk about this Marsing team. I think people thought, oh boy, Marsing lost coach Shea McClellan to Valley View. What are they going to be able to bring to the table? Well, Mike Forrest here takes over and does a pretty nice job.
Well, he had some pieces coming in, some players to work with, and he worked with them, and he's working with what he's got, and he's doing a great job with it. And Marsing, I'm formerly a 2A guy, WIC guy. So, I've seen Marsing over the years quite a bit. They're way out there. A lot of mosquitoes out there in Marsing, but they, they've got, Chavez, Montez, Stonmeyer, like you have right there, and having a junior in Montez, Moises has done a great job coming up. He's watch out for him next year for sure as he becomes a senior. But coming in, they've got a little chip on their shoulder, and coming in from a tough league in the WIC, they got Nampa Christian that kind of gets all the credit with everything. They get all the pub, and Marsing is saying, you know what, we're 6-2. We're 6-2. We're here, and they're going to Ryrie, which historically is, well, like you said, they've never hosted a home playoff game, and so, in fact, I think their field might be like Lovey something field, if I remember right. So there's another Lovey to add into the quiver of names, but I think Marsing, like I said, has something to prove. They're coming from a tough district, and they're always seen as the underdog, and in this one, I don't think they are.
Yeah, Luke Steinmeier, great tight end linebacker, might be the most underrated player that just doesn't get a lot of hype and a lot of love. He is a phenomenal player. And Sean, I always joke with Ryrie and their coach Josh Huntsman, when the season began, we always send out a preseason questionnaire to all of the coaches. And he sent his back in, and it said basically, what are your offensive strengths? I returned 10 of 11 starters. And I said, okay. I said, do you want to expand upon that at all? And he goes, I returned 10 of 11 starters on defense as well. And that was it. He kind of left it at that. And so that was a good nucleus to build from. They also love to run the ball. They've got multiple backs. Coulter Lewis and Rafe Newton have each rushed for over 1,000 yards. Very uncommon to see two 1,000-yard backs in the same backfield.
Yeah, Ryrie just having a phenomenal season. Matt Harris also, gave certain people a hard time for not picking Ryrie to win some games. Against
Marsing. I picked Marsing to beat Ryrie, and I
don't want to throw anyone under a bus or anything, but they're just playing really well. They do a great job offensively. They've been able to put up some really big numbers and keep teams low in the scoring category, only allowing 16 points. I think that's the key. You say you bring back all those seniors on defense. Can you keep this 3A seems to be a low scoring slug affair in these big games, right? So can you hold a team under and score points? Riley has proven they've done that all year.
Yep, they've been a fun team to watch for sure. In the chat, again, Jeb, Josh Huntsman, head coach, and his double wing offense is solid, playing really tough football. He's got Ryrie by a couple scores. Coach has done a great job by turning the program around for sure.
Why don't we just send Jeb a link and he can come on this show?
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm sure he is busy preparing as well.
He's not. He's busy watching this and commenting, so we might as well be on.
It's probably out in the background while he's doing other things, and then he's chiming in with his 2 cents. Let's talk about the last matchup. It is North Fremont and West Jefferson. Oh, you know what? I skipped one as well. I skipped Malad and West Side. So let's do Scott. You and I will tackle Malad West Side, and then Sean can do North Fremont, because Sean to cover 4 East Idaho teams in a row is going to be
West Side's good.
To buy Sean new shirts just because his head's going to get too big. So
yeah, I know, right?
You're good. Sean's good.
I mean, well, that's why I had 2 East Idaho guys on, because I knew there were so many, and then Joel dipped out. So Scott, West Side, like Aberdeen, 7-1 in that rigorous conference with Declo and Aberdeen. Their only loss came to Declo. This is a program that's been to the playoffs 30 times in their school history, Scott. Tyson Moser in his 16th year as the head coach. They have won 3 of the past 4 championships at this level. Usually they're enjoying the first round bye, but this year Declo won the conference on the head-to-head, or on the 3-way tiebreaker because of Max Prep's ranking. Needless to say, this is a West Side team that's locked and loaded and ready to go.
Oh, absolutely. This is a West Side team that is just a perennial favorite every year. I mean, experience matters. And kind of having that pedigree that West Side has, they're expected to be here. And when you come in with those kinds of expectations every single year, then you tend to just elevate everything, and you talk about the last, how many years they've been, in the playoffs, and a head coach that's been there a long time. This is a team, even though they're not getting that first round bye that they're so used to, they're going to be right there. This is a really good West Side team again, and they're loaded. They've got players on both sides of the ball. I fully expect West Side to make a really strong run again.
And they get a conference opponent in the opening round in the Malad Dragons. Malad went 3-5, got in on the strength of that conference. They're coach is not Josh Stewart in his first year. Obviously, I messed up that graphic. They do have a first-year head coach, though, in Brady Price. Sorry about that, Coach Price. I did get the players right, though. Justin Toon, junior tight end, defensive end, good size, really great motor. Brady Scholl has kind of played all over. He's played running back this year. He's kind of played Wildcat quarterback a little bit. That's a name we recognize from other sports as well. So for Malad, kind of like all the other teams we've said, they're playing with house money a little bit. No one's expecting them to go do anything against West Side. It's a team they know well. It's a team they're seeing for the second time this year. Good luck to Coach Price and the Dragons. All right, Sean, North Fremont and West Jefferson played just last week. North Fremont won by a couple of scores. Now they get them again in the opening round of the postseason. What do we make of this North Fremont team? They're 5-3. I think the potential is there, but they have stumbled a couple of times this season.
Yeah, North Fremont started out really hot, going 4-0, and then they lost to Aberdeen, they lost to Firth in overtime, and they lost to Ryrie. So they kind of had a gauntlet of the schedule there, but they've played really well at the start of the season and then kind of had to regroup in the middle of the season. But they did just beat West Jefferson 20-7 to end the season, but definitely have some good players with Andrew Martin, Owen Reed, Roy Wynn. And Roy Wynn can kind of do it all as the running back, and North Fremont is good at running the ball. And if they can run the ball in the trenches, against West Jefferson again, I think they have a good chance of winning this game.
Yeah, and they did lose a couple of tight games along the way this season, along with some big wins for North Fremont. And then for West Jefferson, this is a team that I've been really high on since the start of the year. They went 1-7 last year, but 4 of the 7 losses were by a single possession. And they lost a couple on walk-off, Wendell beat them on a walk-off field goal last year. This was a classic team that the averages suggested would be a lot better. And first-year coach Corey Hall has got a litany of good athletes. They're 4-4. They beat the champs from up north, Grangeville, by a couple of scores. That just shows you how good East Idaho this year is, Sean.
Yeah, they beat Grangeville 48-0 earlier in the season. They got a revenge over Wendell, 54-6 the first game of the year. But definitely a good team. Simmons at quarterback, he's a senior, he's a leader. If they can get it going, it's hard to play it. There's a lot of these matchups where they're playing. I believe Malad Westside's a rematch of last week as well. So it's a lot of teams. You've played the team, you kind of know what they're going to do. But can you stop it? Can you change your game plan? And for West J, they've got to get more scoring done. In the games they've lost, they've had slow starts and not able to put points. And if they fall behind, it'll be very difficult for them.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun rematch for sure, though. Let's see. Jeb. Jeb on fire here. Yeah. Sean, low scoring affair. The over-under is 14.5 total.
Are you working for DraftKings, Jeb?
North Fremont had 4 starters out last week versus Ryrie. I think he means versus West J. Not sure if they will be back for this game. And then here's Chris Ann Hammond, Greg. I hope this video will be posted to watch later. Yes. Good news. You can go back anytime and watch this once we're finished live here on the IdahoSports.com YouTube channel, Facebook page, X account, or Instagram account. To help Chris Ann and others find the replay a little easier, if you could hit that like button or the subscribe button and then share this when we're all said and done, that will help everybody else find it a little easier. I'm looking at the numbers right now. We've got over 330 people watching and only 20 likes. Let's get a few more likes to help everybody find it a little easier on replay, if you would, please, and thank you. All right, guys, let's wrap up with 8-man brackets. We're getting to the end here. 2A looks like this. The 4 district champs got first-round buys. That's Butte County, Logos, Rimrock, and Valley. Otherwise, we've got some pretty interesting matchups, but really it's all conference opponents for the most part. Let's start with Potlatch and Kendrick Ryan, an all North Idaho affair. Kendrick had their 30-game winning streak snapped earlier this season in that loss to Logos that cost them the district championship. Coach Zane Hobart and company very motivated to atone for that and win for the first time at the 2A level after dominating 1A the past couple of years.
Yeah, this Kendrick team, they're going to look a little different this week. I mean, obviously they've been out without Nathan Twite for a few weeks, and Hogan's been, I know, a guy that they've been wanting back in the lineup, and it's a team that they're still extremely talented. They just got younger with the injury stuff that they've been having to go through, and they're taking on a Potlatch team that's scrappy. I mean, this is a team that can play physical too. You look at what Potlatch brings to the table with Marshall and Clark and some of the other they got some youngsters that's mixed into their starting lineup. Waylon Marshall out there, Jay Marshall, a quarterback. They've got some talent in their own right. This Kendrick team, this is kind of weirdly the quietest season I think Coach Hobart's had around his program in a while, just because they've been quietly kind of sitting there winning games. And then obviously they lose to Logos in that stunner a few weeks ago, which Logos is a team that, you talk about everybody buying stock on. They jumped to number 1 in the final media poll. But you look at this group too. I mean, you're going to see guys that you still got the likes of Wyatt Cook. I mean, the kid can flat play. He's a beast out there. Raleigh Rotsunder, he's a dynamic wide receiver on the outside too. Are they going to be more run heavy this week? That's what you're kind of wanting to see. And then I think, they've got one of the better quarterbacks in 8-man football with Maddox Kirkland back there. That kid can flat sling it. I mean, Coach Hobart sent me a video where he threw it 60 yards in the air earlier this year in a game. It's just, there's some impressive athletes regardless of classification side, but Kendrick certainly has seemed lately for the last few years to almost get all of them. So can Potlatch pull the upset Friday night? I think it's going to be a great game. I mean, I'm going to be able to be lucky to be on the call for this one down at Lewiston High School, their new facility. This is going to be cool to see these two teams on turf Friday night and just see what they can bring to the table. I think it's going to be a dogfight and probably deceptively close.
Yeah. It's always tough to play the same team, back to back like this, Kendrick and Potlatch. Only the 7th postseason appearance in school history for Potlatch as well. And they have a nice tradition for home games. This is obviously a road game, but every time somebody scores, they've got a local logger that cuts off a little cookie, and then they put spray paint the number of the kid who scored the touchdown on there. It's kind of a cool tradition they've got there at Potlatch. Scott, you're up next. We've got an all District 4 first round matchup, Raft River and Hagerman. Let's start with Hagerman. This is a team you and I have been very bullish on this year, and even going back to last year when they made the Final Four of the 1A classification. They have jumped up to the 2A ranks this year, and all Coach Bill Hicks and company have done is gone 8-1. Their lone loss was to Valley. It cost them the conference title, but oh my gosh, speed and athletes galore.
Yeah, this has become one of my favorite teams just because they're close, but the exposure that we had with them last year and seeing what they were bringing back this year, you could just tell that this was going to be a special group. And they're led by Wyatt Mavenkamp. This kid is a stud, and I believe he's only a junior, not a senior. And
yes,
and so this is a guy that is just putting up some crazy numbers. I mean, he's thrown for over 2,200 yards this year. You break it all down, it's about 250 yards a game, 38 touchdowns to 4 interceptions. And my goodness, it's a team that is scoring about 50 points a game. Kai Kendall, he's got over 1,500 yards or about 1,500 yards receiving, 19 touchdowns. This is a group of kids that are just playing football the way it is supposed to be played. You could just tell when you watch them that they're having fun. They're positive. They believe in themselves. And like you said, they have got talent galore and a very experienced head coach that knows how to manage it all. I tell you what, this classification here has got some really good football teams in it, because when you look at the final, Max Prep's rankings with all of this, I mean, you got Butte County, Logos, Kendrick, Hagerman. I mean, those are your top 4. And any one of those 4 teams could beat each other. This is a really tough classification. And I really like this Hagerman team, though.
They all did.
Maryland defense. I mean, I was there for that Hagerman game a couple nights ago when they destroyed Butte County.
Yeah.
And that defense for Hagerman gave them a lot of trouble. I think it was three fumbles that they recovered in the first quarter. Did Hagerman and Seamus Merrill. That guy's a stud back there.
Yeah, he's a receiver.
I mean, that wasn't even a close game. I mean, Hagerman won that one by 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, it was not close.
Yeah, and it's at all 3 levels, right, Paul? It's Seamus Merrill on the back end, Coleman Pierce at linebacker, and he's a great offensive guard, and then Alex Johnson up front, 2-way lineman.
Yeah.
Just a beast for Hagerman.
Yeah, I mean, if you're running the football, you're like, okay, I got past the first guy. Oh, shoot, there's a second guy. Oh, shoot, there's the third. And by that time, you're usually crying for mama at that point. Hagerman is a very good football team.
Yeah, Hagerman is stout for sure. And Scott, you mentioned it, that top 5 in 1A, Butte County, Logos, Kendrick, Valley, Hagerman, all with 1 loss each. They all kind of beat each other. Valley beat Hagerman. Hagerman beat Butte County. Butte County beat Logos. Logos beat Kendrick. I mean, I can't wait.
Yeah. I mean, you look at that, we talk about, how the 4A is so tough. This is a very good equivalent to that. So many good teams here. I'm really excited for this particular bracket.
Yep. Gary says, let's go Hagerman. And yet, Scott, at the same time, their opponent, no slouch either, Raft River, they're 4-4. It's a little deceptive. They had to navigate some injury problems throughout the season. Kai Ward, kind of the focal point of their offense, missed a couple games with an injury. They're working him back in. And Raft River is just one of those teams this time of year that just seems to find a way to survive and advance in the bracket.
Yeah, you know what? And the bad thing for Raft River, this year have been a lot of the injuries that they've had to deal with. But, they just played Hagerman last week and got dumped 42-6. And now for the second week in a row, they're going to have to play them again. And I don't know if I see a whole lot changing from one week to the next when it's like that, but Raft River, they've got a pedigree too. They have been so good for so long that, inevitably something like this is going to happen where you just kind of battle things all year and it just doesn't come together. Injuries, what do you do? But they're in the playoffs. They got a shot, a small one, but they're there.
Yep, for sure.
Hey, real quick, Brandon, I know we're short on time, but Gary Mode, who just commented, he actually owns Bullets and Brew in Hagerman, and they sell coffee, antiques, and guns. And I went in there and met him when I was in Hagerman last week, and he gave me a Hagerman hat. So I got to give Gary some props out there.
Oh, awesome. Cool. That's awesome. We love to hear those stories for sure. Okay. Now we have a couple of cross-divisional games on the bottom half of the bracket, Glens Ferry and Kamei, and then Grace and Prairie. Let's start with Kamei, Ryan. This is a Cubs team that it's the last ride for David Clute. Man, he's been a 4-year starter at quarterback and defensive back. And, can he and the Cubs, can he and the boys defend home field against a really good Glens Ferry team? They went 6-3. All 3 losses came to the 3 teams that finished above them in the White Pine, Logos, Kendrick, and Prairie. There's nothing wrong with this resume.
No, their resume, I mean, it's a playoff pedigree resume, and you look at all the names are there. I mean, you've got Dave Clute, you've got the Oatmans, you've got Schonings, you've got Skinners, you've got all the recognizable names of, years past and current, teams, and they're not too far away from a nice playoff run of their own. And, it's the unfortunate event of, in their case, of Kendrick coming up from 1A, and getting them this year. But this is a team, they're loaded. You look at Dave Clute's stat lines this season. I mean, the dude's got 139.9 QB rating. He's 26 TDs to 1 interception on the season. The guy just doesn't turn it over. He's a touchdown machine. I mean, he's got, over 2,200 total yards on the season. This is a team that offensively, any given night, you could watch them short a scoreboard out. And so this is a team offensively, you really have to give them a lot of respect. The other thing is you can't sleep on them on defense either. I mean, they can cover very well. Clute on the defensive side of the ball is a ball hawking DB. And, they've got certainly a lot of defensive nice pieces there with Schoening up front in that front set, or the front set there with that middle linebacker. And this is a team I wouldn't want to face in the first round. I mean, it's not really a nice draw for anyone. They just play in the toughest conference in my mind, top to bottom, the competitive wise, and it kind of backs it up a little bit with the playoff appearances, but you get 5 teams in. That says a lot about your conference that you get 5 teams from one league into your bracket.
Yep. And Cami will host on Saturday. Scott, Glens Ferry. Once upon a time, Glens Ferry was a force to be reckoned with, especially in the 90s. I mean, 17 career playoff appearances. They had fallen on hard times recently because of how good this District 4 is, but they finally found a way to swim upstream a little bit. They beat Raft River early on this season, which was a huge win, put some wind behind their sails, and they've got athletes. Bryce Sterling, every game, it seems like he's got about 100 yards rushing and 100 yards receiving, plus a couple of TDs. This is a Glens Ferry team that has had a fantastic year.
They really have. I mean, they're 6-3, and their 3 losses have come to some teams we just got done talking about: Valley, Hagerman, and Grace. And so they lost to some really good teams. But, like you said, they've got some athletes on this squad. I mean, quarterback-wise, they're led by Stewart, who's just kind of doing his thing at about 150 yards a game, managing it well, 14 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. And, but they can run the ball with 3 different people in Sterling, Valencia, and Stewart. And, Sterling's their leading rusher and receiver, but it's not about having one standout guy. This is a good team that's solid. They have a lot of people that are contributing, and, I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if they made a little noise in the tournament.
Toughest first round game to peg for me is this Glens Ferry Cami matchup. Here's former Glens Ferry pilot Leif Morrison, director of the Idaho Bowl. Go Pilots!
I was just going to mention him and say that ever since he stepped down as head coach, the program's just really fallen off the face of the map. It's I think Leif was really the driving force behind all the success that Glens Ferry had.
Yes, they have pulled themselves back up, though, and are doing a fantastic job now for sure. Our final matchup of the first round, if we look at the bracket one more time quickly, it's Grace at Prairie. Paul, you just saw Grace last week. They played Butte County for the East Idaho Championship. They were dinged up a little bit this year. It seems like they've gotten a lot of their key pieces back. They're 5-4. Yeah. This is a team that has gotten to the semifinals in recent years. Very dangerous team.
And they play teams from everywhere. I mean, they went to, up to Kuski, played Clearwater Valley, North Gem, Adrian. So they've had a lot of different menu items this year on that. And going up to Prairie is going to be a tough one. They looked good last week. Butte County rebounded after the Hagerman loss last week, got their guys back healthy. They had the flu before that. And Grace looked good. They lost, but overall they looked okay. So yeah, I think any injuries they had, I think they're back at a good time, and they did. And so yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. Albeit that one, we're going to see how it goes. So it's up in Cami. It's never an easy place to play. Up there in the mountains, the Cubs are tough. But yeah, this is definitely one of those where I look at it and go, let's see what happens.
So Paul, you're getting your opponent scrambled up here. You are actually going to be exclusively.
I got Prairie Friday night, Cami Saturday. So Paul, I'm doing both those.
Paul is exclusively broadcasting the entire bottom half of this bracket. He's doing Grace at Prairie Friday night, and then Glens Ferry at Cami on Saturday.
And so you look at Prairie. Okay, now I'll switch gears and go to Prairie. They got Hasselstrom back, second stint, like it says there. Not only does he coach, he drives the bus. He does everything up there in Prairie, and it's not like it's not like it was coaching that caused a downfall. They lost players. It was a rough time. And he inherited a program that was on its way up. And I think he'd be the first one to tell you that. It's always good to be a Pirate in Cottonwood, and having him back, having a Hewlin Cotton and Wemhoff on the team for the 37th year in a row. It's just what they do up there. And so, yeah, a rough year this year. Very, very rough year this year. And going up against Grace, I think this really is a true 4-5 matchup. If you look at it, I would almost say Grace would be the 4 and Prairie the 5, but you really throw those numbers out the window when you get into a game like this. And it's going to be 6 o'clock start. It's going to be cold up there in Cottonwood, but it's going to be a lot of fun. I wish someone was going to be there to enjoy it with me on the broadcast.
You're putting the bat signal.
They got a guy like Rambo, and I don't know what possessed God in heaven to make a man like Rambo. to quote the movie. But
Oh boy.
Oh yeah, that's good stuff there, Skaggs, for sure. And that puts a wrap on the 2A bracket. We do have one comment here. Dalton Talbot, go Eagles. I think he's talking about the Marsh Valley Eagles. I could be wrong on that. You'll have to let us know which Eagles you are referring to there. But guys, let's take a look at our final bracket here. It is the 1A bracket. The 4 district champions, or 4 of the 5 district champions, got first round buys. That would be Cary, Council, Wallace, and Rockland. Deary is the 5th district champion, so they had to play in the opening round. They will get the 12th qualifier. The Cascade Ramblers. Lucas, you didn't get to talk at all in the 2A section because Rimrock had a bye, and you'll get to talk about them next week. But this bracket's for you. There were 4 teams from the Long Pin Conference that got into the playoffs this year. Council got the bye, but then we're going to see Garden Valley, we're going to see Tri-Valley, and we are going to see Cascade. This was a big breakthrough for a Ramblers team that's been on hard times. I mean, they didn't even have enough players for a team a couple years ago.
Yeah, I mean, you want to talk about a great story. I mean, yeah, there you go. And now here they are in the state playoffs. So, I mean, hats off to them to, get a team together, and B, get to the state playoffs. So, yeah, that's a tremendous story. And you talk about this team that's 4-3 and got a 4th-year head coach as well with a senior quarterback. So, a team that you look at entering this state tournament kind of playing with house money, but in a different kind of way, not necessarily because they snuck into the tournament, but just because of the backstory that they've had. So any team that has that little bit of looseness coming into a game and can take something off their shoulders is always a dangerous team.
And Ryan, they're going to get to take on the Deary Mustangs, the champions from the White Pine League. They went 4-4 this year. First time they've been to the playoffs in a couple of seasons. I know overall this wasn't the strongest league this year, but Deary has a lot of just good athletes that seem interchangeable.
Yeah, and this team, I mean, you look at their record and what they had to go through to find their way into the playoffs. I mean, getting a big win over a Genesee team that, was on the upswing this year. They, lost a tight one to Lakeside. They got a big win over Coeur Christ in a, an offensive explosion in that game with Beyer and Hubbard and Meckling. And then you look at some of the other kids they've got on their roster. They've got height and size. This is a team that, they give you fits with their athleticism. And the other thing too, for an 8-man team is they got a pretty deep roster. And, so there's the numbers there with this group to be able to make some noise. And, it's going to be a tough matchup in the first round, obviously drawing. I think it's a really tough draw for them to play Cascade. But, if you're going to look at a chance to have a win in this game, you're going to have to win with your athletes on the field and let your upperclassmen carry you on the way out the door. So, I mean, that's going to be a good game with this Deary team.
For sure. And Ryan, I believe that is the last North Idaho team. So you can hang out here and listen to us if you want, or you can leave because I've taken so much of your guys' time. So totally up to you.
My wife already put my son to bed, so I'm just kind of hanging out now.
Okay, good. I just want to make sure. Thank you guys all for doing this, by the way. These will get shorter as teams get eliminated too. So thanks to everybody for hanging out. Only 3 more matchups to talk about, and then we're out of here. Chalice and Dietrich. Sean, Chalice took 3rd place, or actually 2nd place over in East Idaho this year. Normally a 2A school. They petitioned down to play at the 1A level. They went 5-3. They beat North Gem. They lost to Rockland. That basically was how they did in conference against the other, contemporaries that are in the playoffs. Nels Clute is not the coach. It's Les Webb. You can tell this was when we were getting close to start time and I was trying to fire out these graphics as quickly as I could. Lots of mistakes all over. Those will be fixed next week. Les Webb is the coach at Chalice, but all the athletes are the same. And I really like this kid at quarterback, Jason Farr. He kind of reminds me of John Elway back in the day. He's kind of just a 6'3", 6'4" kid. He's running around all over, scrambling in the pocket, and then he just throws like a 60-yard bomb down the field, Sean. He's a fun guy to watch.
Yeah, kind of, the arm extended, pointing at people, and maybe he might just run it or throw it. Yeah, but Chalice wrote their own destiny, right? They took care of business against North Gem, which was a close game, 40-38, and then, did lose to Rockland. But Chalice, kind of a team not getting a lot of, praise, but really putting together a nice season and should have a good chance, I think, with what you said with Farr as quarterback. And they're playing well when it matters here, ending, the season with two wins. So I think Chalice has a good shot here.
And they had a bye last week, so they had a week to rest up and kind of get ready and prepare for this first round playoff matchup as well. And again, the opponent that Chalice will be taking on, Scott, the Dietrich Blue Devils. I feel like Dietrich has kind of been forgotten about. I mean, geez, they went 7-1. Their only loss was to Cary. Both teams were 1-2 in the polls going into that matchup. And yes, Cary won in decisive fashion, but other than that, Dietrich has taken care of business this year, and yet they have slipped in the rankings. They've slipped in the polls. I think this is still, at least from what I see, the second best team behind Cary.
Well, and if you look at the rankings, that reflects that entirely. I mean, this is a Dietrich team that were blowing people out left and right until they ran into Cary, and then they next week blew somebody else out. I mean, this is a really good Dietrich team that can score points in a hurry. They've got some talented guys that when we talk about their offense, Connor Perkins. I mean, what he's able to do moving that football and putting points up is I mean, it's phenomenal. These guys are really, really good. They just ran into a real kind of a problem with Cary because Cary is really good. And I think Cary and Dietrich very well could be the best two teams in the 1A rank.
They did meet in the state championship in 2020. Dietrich won that game. So we shall see. And then Cary moved up to the 2A level. They're back at the 1A level. But yes, Dietrich, I think, is going to be just fine. They are a supremely talented team. They've got athletes galore. And then on the bottom half of the bracket, guys, North Gem and Tri-Valley. Sean, this is the coach I know you and Joel talk to a lot week in, week out on the East Idaho Prepcast. Coach Corey Hatch of the North Gem Cowboys. They love running that triple option. And if they throw the ball, twice in a game, something's gone horribly wrong with the game plan.
Yeah. And maybe one of the best names, right? Rusty Hatch at, quarterback, running back, really, right? Not really a quarterback, but in there as quarterback, Rusty Hatch doing a phenomenal job. But North Gem was a team we kind of were pretty high on at the start of the year. Kind of took some lumps, lost to some teams, lost to Chalice, like I mentioned, lost to Garden Valley. But they did beat Mackey. They lost to Grace pretty badly, but Rockland was 44-60. They lost, but they have the ability, if you can keep the game a lower scoring 8-man football game. I don't know exactly what those numbers are, but if you can kind of keep it a lower scoring game, I feel like they have a better chance running the ball with Rusty Hatch and Yost. Craig Yost has also had some phenomenal job, a phenomenal job this year as well.
And they all play defense too. North Gem's got like 10 or 11 guys, so they squeeze every last ounce out of these guys. And you're right, Rusty Hatch, one of the all-time great names in Idaho football, for sure. Paul, North Gem is going to get a Tri-Valley team that is high octane. Jace Wagoner, junior quarterback, Tyler Wagoner, the head coach. This Wagoner kid can really play, and he can take off and run and make a house call anytime he decides to run the football.
And I've said this, I don't know how many times over the years with 8-man football. If you've got a player that can run, get to that outside edge and go, you're going to go places. And they've got that in Jace Wagner. He's got quicks, and he's got that line to kind of free things up for him as well. So he's a dual, triple threat guy. And like any 8-man team, all these players that we're, queuing on for offense, they all play defense as well. And so they have to defend their own turf with the offense on the other side. And so it's, you've got a Wagner and Moyne Ingram as a senior. It's going to be a fun game. I wish I was going to that one. I can't go to 3. I can only go to 2. Will Henneke is going to be at that one, and he's going to have a blast. Mr. Idaho 8-man himself is going to be in Cambridge for that one, and it's going to be a good one.
And Elias DeVries at DN is a real problem. He's averaging like 2.5 sacks per game just something astronomical like that. So, yeah. All right. And then our final matchup, guys, Garden Valley hosting Shoshone. Lucas, Garden Valley 5-2, back in the playoffs. Their only 2 losses were to Council and Tri-Valley, the 2 teams that finished ahead of them. Jason Yearsley is in his 14th year. They just got dudes. They just have athletes. Max Yearsley plays. So this is crazy, Lucas. At one point this year, Garden Valley was playing like 6 kids a game at quarterback. They've got it whittled down now to 1, Maddox Miller, but it's just interesting. They can put any athlete back there and be just fine.
Yeah, and it's an interesting 8-9 matchup kind of because of that. And Paul said it just a few minutes ago. 8-man's about speed. It's about it's the first to the corner, and then once you turn that corner, it's 6 points. And so when you have some teams down in the 1A and 2A and these 8-man football ranks, it's you got one guy that can do it. Well, Garden Valley's got a couple, and you're looking at a couple of them right there on your screen with Yerzy and Corn there, running back and receiver. So when you have multiple guys that you got to cover, that just makes it even tougher to defend because you're playing 8. You have 8 guys on a field that's designed for 11, right? So as soon as you get to the corner and the first to that edge, that's partly why Garden Valley has been able to put up so many points this year. So definitely a lot of speed on that team, and they're going to be tough to stop.
Yep. And when push comes to shove, if Garden Valley really needs a play, they're going to line up and have Corn bang between the guards and pick up some tough yardage up the middle for sure. Yep. All right, Scott, our final team that we're going to talk about here. This is, to me, the best story of the season in Idaho high school football, Shoshone High School. They have not been to the playoffs since 2000. The last time Shoshone High School was preparing for a football playoff game, the Y2K bug had just happened. I mean, that's how long ago we're talking about. The turn of the millennium, 2000.
Yeah.
Scott, a 5-3 record. First-year head coach and Mike Nunnally has totally changed the culture around. Nobody saw this coming, and if anyone says they did, they're lying. This is just only the 6th playoff appearance in school history. Scott, what a season it's been for Shoshone.
Oh my word, it is. And before you introduce this, the first thing that came into my head was this is the feel-good story of football this year because you're right, nobody saw this coming, and what Nunnally has been able to do here in his first year with a culture change. Those things take a long time to build, especially when you don't have a pedigree of postseason play and winning records. And for him to come in and do that and get the buy-in that he got with these kids, I mean, what an amazing job. I mean, their losses, they've got 3 losses and 2 of them are to Cary and Dietrich. Arguably the top 2 teams in this division. And this is a good team. I mean, it really is. I mean, Bud Cortez, their quarterback, is doing what he's supposed to do. And you've got Hunt and Juarez listed there as well. These guys are contributing as well, but it's not about the players with Shoshone. It's about the attitude and just the positivity, the feel good, all of this stuff. And it's just got this glow around it that where in the heck did Shoshone come from? Because this is not a team that we talk about come playoff time in football.
And they've got a freshman quarterback who's coming up with the first name Tebow. This kid was bred to be a quarterback, obviously. And he's a freshman. So watch out the next couple of 3 years. They're going to be awesome.
Yeah, well, and that's what a culture change will do. It just gets those kids out. And the number one thing when you got to build programs is you got to get kids out. Yeah. And the way you do that is you change a culture and you make kids want to come out. And then pretty soon you're getting the right kids out because, the negative programs get the negative kids out. But a culture, man, a good positive one like Shoshone has developed. It's going to last a while. It'll last a while.
Yeah.
Yep. And that's what the high school playoffs are all about. And nobody is better prepared to give you those storylines than this team at IdahoSports.com. We know these coaches. We know these players. We know these communities, okay? Nobody knows Idaho high school sports like IdahoSports.com. This weekend, there are 28 first-round games. We covered every single game in depth. We gave every team a couple of minutes of love. It added up to 2 hours. I'm truly sorry that it went this long, but at the same time, all of these teams deserve the credit and the attention. And like I said, Gem State Game Day will get shorter and shorter as the field, of course, gets whittled down. But thank you so much for tuning in. We will be broadcasting 15 different first-round games across the state this weekend. That is over 50% of the games, which is impressive when you consider that all of these games are at 28 different venues, and most of them are on Friday night. There are 3 Saturday games. All the rest are pretty much on Friday. And so for IdahoSports.com, Paul, to be able to go cover 15 different games with the staff we have and the crew members we have, I think is a great accomplishment.
Yeah, I can't remember for sure, but I think the record we had is 21 games in that first round. But I think that week they played Thursday, Friday, Saturday. They played, games in Holt Arena those 3 days and made it pretty easy to just, park a couple guys there and rack in a couple games or, 4 or 5 games. So, yeah, that's not happening this year. Everything's in a different spot. No double headers, nothing on Thursday. So everything's Friday and Saturday. So, huge shout out to all of you guys who, move schedules around and this isn't what you do full time. So being willing to go to Twin Falls, Lucas, and going to Lewiston, Ryan, these places where you got to get to. I think one thing Lucas told Brandon was, if there's a game on Mars, I'll go. Something to that effect. And that's the and nothing happens at IdahoSports.com without these and the other guys on the team that really turn the gears here. So thank you. It's awesome.
Yep. And here's Jeb. Again, Brandon, great job facilitating this. Really, it's the team effort. I mean, I just set it up and these guys are the experts, but everyone else did a really nice job too. This was really great to listen to. Idaho needs this. Keep it up. The best way you can help Jeb and everybody else that was watching tonight is spread the word. Tell everybody, hey, the IdahoSports.com guys broke down all of the first round playoff matchups on Gem State Game Day. And the easiest way you can do that, of course, is word of mouth, but also by hitting that like button and then sharing this when it's all said and done. This is why we do it. We do it for you, the fans, you, the athletes, you, the communities. And so we really appreciate all of the support from everybody out there. So, all right. Anything left to say, guys? I think we've said it all, right?
Yep. I think so.
I'm getting nods of agreement. So for Lucas Gebhardt, Paul Kingsbury, Ryan Skaggs, Sean Kane, Scott Burton, and Joel Richardson, who ducked out early, didn't even make it an hour, guys. That's weak. Didn't even make it an hour. I am Brandon Beatty. Thanks for tuning in to Gem State Game Day. Enjoy the games this weekend, everybody. And of course, stay locked into IdahoSports.com for live broadcasts, updated scores, and updated brackets as well this weekend. Thanks for tuning in to Gem State Game Day, everybody. We'll see you back here next week on IdahoSports.com.